What's up and welcome back to the channel. You are here with Ninja Knight. This is Real Talk, and this week's Real Talk, going to be talking to a man that talks an awful lot of truth. You've seen his videos, you've seen the channel, it's Satirical Soldier. I'm always shouting him out here on this channel. I have to say, I'm always amazed with the videos that he puts out, the production value that goes behind them, the thoughts, the very specific speech that he uses in the videos. This is a man that I have to say, I think an awful lot of people have come to know and have come to love. The left hate him, but we love him. And here he is. Here's Satirical Soldier. So we're bringing him in there. Welcome.
It's great to be in, my friend.
I'm looking
Would you
forward to
believe
this one.
literally
This is one that
just
I've been
2
excited
seconds
about
before
already.
you brought me in? Sorry, but 2 seconds before you brought me in, I dropped the whole phone all over the floor. But sorry, go on.
What a great start to it. Anyway, we know this comes on production with way things go here. So we'll be jumping into the chat in a few minutes to say hello to people. I'm sure there's a lot of love in the chat already for Satirical Soldier. If you don't know, and you're only in here, this is the first time you've joined into this channel, Satirical Soldier here on the right-hand side there. He has a different username here tonight, but Satirical Soldier is on YouTube and he has his own YouTube channel. So if someone threw his channel into the chat there with one of the mods, I'd greatly appreciate that, to get people to follow. I know that we'll have a couple of people that absolutely despise you in here tonight, which is great. So welcome to all the shitheads that like to come in here and say nasty things about you, Satirical Soldier. We'll get to know you a little bit over the course of this stream, because I'm sure as well too the media loves to tarnish people, and it's something that I have a video coming out about, tarnishing people's character and their name, and that's something that they're a big fan of doing. So maybe we'll start off just kind of at the start and say, how did you gain an online presence? And maybe even before that, if you would be able to discuss the military side of things that you engaged in and being part of the army over the years, that might be a good one to start off with.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I joined the FCA when I was 14. And it's kind of a funny story when I think about it. I didn't even know where the army barracks was in Galway. I had a couple of friends that brought me up for a look when I was 14 years old. And I knew the sergeant. And he pulled me to one side to fill in the paperwork. And where it says date of birth, I said, I'll never pass for like a 20-year-old ever. So I put in 16 for the crack. So he came over to me and said, listen, you're too young. You're only 16. But he said, come back next week when you're 18. So I went back the following week and I filled it in. And I said I was 18 and I was able to get into the FCA at 14 years old. So for the next 3 years, I was a medic. I tell you, it was great crack as well, like, you know. Fantastic experience. And as soon as I got as far as the age of 17, I had to join the army. I was completely sold on the notion of serving my country. And as soon as I'd done the leaving cert, I done the fitness test, the medical, the interview for the army, and I joined in Cavan in the year 2000 on the 28th of August. Enjoyed every minute of it until March of 2020, and sure, COVID-19 kind of turned everyone's world upside down. But before that, I managed to get 6 trips overseas. I trained 5 platoons, which is about, you're talking 200 soldiers, you know. I don't know how many operations I did, but again, a very rich career, like, you know. But it wasn't until COVID-19 then that I started to get really, really upset. For that period of time, I wasn't even able to persuade my fellow soldiers that what was going on was wrong. The fact that we were giving up our rights and freedoms to Simon Harris, of all people, like, what are we doing? What are we at? But it wasn't until they decided to send soldiers to these quarantine hotels in, I'm fairly sure it was March of 2021. And then I think it was maybe 10 days later, I had a conversation with one of the captains up there about the actual mission itself. And I wanted to persuade him maybe that what was going on was wrong. By the time we got to the end of the discussion, he told me that he agreed with the mission. And I told him that I won't be doing it. And if he tries to send me, I'll make him famous. And straight after that, then I went down and I applied for my discharge. And as it was coming up to my discharge at that stage, then I started to jump onto Twitter. And I got a little bit louder and a little bit louder, you know. And Tracy had a good Twitter presence as well at that stage. And I think an awful lot of her retweeting what I was saying kind of gained me a little bit more notoriety. And a couple of days after I left, then I uploaded a few videos to my YouTube, which seemed to be received fairly well by people who valued freedom. And then, of course, you have the lefties and the government, mind you, because I was investigated for one video called Dear Taoiseach, which I managed to get out of anyway. Not that I gave much of a shit. But I suppose I accumulated a lot of enemies and accumulated a lot of friends along the way. And I've kind of embraced the fact that I don't want to say but I'm a bit of a bad boy. I say what I want. If I think you're a Marxist at all, I'm going to treat you with all the contempt you deserve. I'm despised for that, and I love it. But I think anybody who's met me in person, knows that I'm not a bad guy at all. I don't mean anybody any harm. But if I detect that you're a Marxist who's trying to weaponize one of your immutable characteristics, whether it's your race, your sexuality, your gender, or whatever stupid ideas you have, if you're trying to weaponize those concepts to make me a slave to your ways, well, then it's fucking game on,
Yeah. Oh no, I totally agree with you. And I think like yourself there, you go through life, and I think most of us, as I do always say, it's kind of like the movie The Matrix. You decide to yourself, you're plugged into things. You think people just come and go, and you play sports with them or whatever. And then an incident like 2020 happens, and you go, well, all of these people that you thought were actually sound and possessed somewhat of a brain actually don't, and they will follow laws and rules that are made up by absolute shysters to do things that don't make sense and to deprive you of your rights and freedoms and civil liberties. And that's when I was put onto your channel by a number of people, and because I had been putting out videos as well, and then they were saying, there's another guy, Satirical, so you should give him a look. And I said, well, I'd like to hear a different perspective, obviously, because when you're in this frame of mind, you're thinking, is it just me or is there other people? And you listen to yourself then and you go, well, there's a guy there with a very distinguished career, and he's talking about how he was touring in different countries and stuff like that, and then these people on the left are calling him a racist. You're like, how is that making any sort of sense? And it doesn't. And so what you do is you look into your videos and you go, this is a guy now that knows what he's talking about and is making the points very effectively, which obviously brings then people to your door to say, hey, stop making out good points, making us look bad.
Just since you said that there about racist, I remember the first time I was called a racist. I don't remember what point I made, but I remember it was well over 10 years ago and on Facebook, and someone called me a racist. And I remember I was absolutely horrified. I was never called a racist in my life, but I was absolutely horrified. And I remember scrolling back thinking, what in the name of God am I after saying to make this fool call me a racist? And I suppose with these lefties, they actually count on you being a decent person, that if you're called an ist or an ism or a phobia, that you'll just back off, And I made the fatal mistake for an awful long time thinking that if I just argue with them and I make valid points, that they won't think I'm a racist anymore. But it took me an awful long time to figure out that when these absolute morons call you a racist, what they're basically saying is, I don't agree with you and you need to shut up. That's basically what it means, But I'm lucky to be on this side of life where I can attach my name now to everything that I say and not have to worry about an army of paedophile enablers ringing the army saying I used hurty words to describe someone, And I even remember actually not long after I retired, they were still ringing the army and still tagging the army saying, do you know you've an ex-soldier? You need to take his pension and you need to deal with him. And I fucking laughed my whole off at them because I knew at that stage I'm free. And I just even touch on that as well. I absolutely understand and respect why people choose to be anonymous, people who value freedom, because this is not a free country. This is an absolutely tyrannical state where if you say something that doesn't go along with the government narrative, they call it cancel culture, but it's actually much worse than that, really. They literally want to rob you of your right to work and provide for your family and feed yourself. They want to rob you of life itself, And I think it's so vile and disgusting.
Oh, absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. And again, adding to that point there, that's what these people do. And you have to understand that from my point of view now as well as yours, these people have no concept that we actually think and believe and know that these individuals are evil. And they don't
Oh
get
yeah.
that whatsoever. At no point in time do they ever say to themselves, maybe I'm the baddie. You know, like that famous meme or that famous, what was a clip from a TV show, it was a MASH or something like that. I don't know what the name of it was. But anyway, are we the baddies? You know, they never seem to contemplate that whatsoever. Whereas like someone who was a critical thinker goes, well, am I doing something that's wrong here? Or should I? And then you go, no, actually, I'm emboldened by the fact that you've got so many people out there now speaking up, going, this is totally wrong. We shouldn't be telling kids that they can change their gender at will. You know, and these are things that were sensible 20 years ago, whereas now it's like, oh, I don't know if you can say that. And you're looking at people saying to yourself, hang on here, what planet are we living on? And when did this stuff start? How did it begin? And particularly here in Ireland.
Yeah, it is. It's actually amazing. There's a guy that I watch. He used to be a lecturer over in Portland, Oregon. I think it's Oregon, but it's definitely Portland anyway. And Portland is like ground zero for Antifa. They're literally insane over there. But he was kind of forced out of his college. His name is Peter Boghossian. And he refers to this system, this wokeism, he calls them uniquely stupid beliefs. And if you think you can change your gender by way of a declaration and by performing, putting on makeup and performing like a woman, you're uniquely stupid. Like it's that simple, really. You're a uniquely stupid person. And I think we need to embrace that notion that somebody who says a man can be a woman by way of a declaration is a uniquely stupid person.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I mean, this is a Portland, Oregon's an interesting place as well, because I think Elon Musk was referencing that recently as well on Twitter and on one of the interviews that he was doing, and particularly then California then as well. He's like, this is the hub, and people haven't ventured outside of that state. And for an awful lot of people here in Ireland in particular, like when you're talking to them, like unless you've traveled to America and have spoken to people there, they actually have no concept of what's going on outside their state. Some of them haven't left their state in their entire lives, and they can be 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old men and women, and they've no idea. And so when they're living in that part of society for so long, they obviously think that that's the norm, and it's been enforced upon the world so much so that when it comes to a place like this, it's met with hitting like what happened in 2020 and onwards. And a few of them just don't want to say. And I think that's where the momentum is coming now, from people being very unhappy about the immigration system here in this country. And it's a very viable thing to be angry about, because you have people being shoved into your areas wrongly, in my opinion, because we didn't vote for this, we didn't ask for this, this wasn't part of anyone's election promise, and these people have been forced into your areas and you've been told to deal with it. Well, no, that's not what we're looking for here. And not only that, then houses are six figures at this stage of the game. It's incredibly difficult to get on the property ladder, and yet then you have other people on the other side then saying, let as many of them in as much as possible. Useful idiots, and like you said, uniquely stupid in that way. So take me through some of your videos there, Satirical Soldier, and what the sort of process is. Like, what do you get when you get an idea for a video? Like, what is the process for it, and how do you hone in? Your video in particular, I just wanted to highlight, it was the one on masculinity. And when you're talking about, people in particular, it's a time where men need to be strong, and strong men are needed. And that masculinity video that you did, which showed the likes of Eamon Ryan dancing around in the gay parade, along with Leo Varadkar, unable to hold a hurl and slap a schlitter, we'll just say. How do you bring that together? What's your thoughts, and how do you process that?
This is going to sound nuts here. I bought a laptop in 2019 because I'm one of those guys where I'll be thinking something, but my thoughts will branch off over and over again. I just keep branching off thoughts. So I find it hard to be kind of linear, if you know what I'm saying. So I bought a laptop with the sole purpose of recording my thoughts and trying to make those thoughts follow a good, clear, definitive line. And that's kind of the process I've been working with. What I'll do is, if I do have an idea or a notion, or if I want to get a point across, I'll sit down with my laptop and I'll write something out very rough. I will leave it for the night, and I'll go back the next day and I'll rewrite it. I could scrap the whole thing and rewrite it again, but I typically won't make the video until I'm happy that I've made a very clear, that I've created a clear message. And what I want to do with that message is I want to make sure it holds up to scrutiny, that if somebody tries to tackle me by way of an argument, that I'm going to make it difficult, you know, because what I really want to achieve is I want to achieve a worldview that isn't wrong. You know, I want to test myself and I want to test my worldview. And with that masculinity video, actually, believe it or not, I'm very lucky that it came off with the camera in my face in one take. That was actually just a pure off-the-cuff ramble that worked. And it's not often like it. That never really happens to me, you know, an off-the-cuff ramble that works. Because I was actually thinking about this stuff for a while. And I have a friend as well. He's actually ex-bomb disposal. He lives a few miles down the road. Great character as well, on the same wavelength. And we typically talk about this stuff in voice messages as well on WhatsApp, as well as meeting up every now and again. And it was actually him. We were actually, there's a football pitch down the road and we're pucking to her, like, you know, and he said to me, do you ever see that clip of Leo Varadkar trying to strike a ball? And he's just like you as well. He's saying the same thing. Like, how can you respect a man who can't, like sport is such a masculine thing, like, you know, and I'm not saying you don't have to be great at sport, but my God, Leo Varadkar picking up a hurl, trying to connect it with a schlitter, it was the most feminine thing I've ever seen in my life. And this guy is supposed to be our leader. Like, my God, the state of this fella. But I was very lucky that it came off in one take. And as I was talking, I did, I suppose, have images of what I was going to put into the video as well to highlight what I meant. And even now, I notice when you're on Twitter and you look at all these Fine Gael representatives and all these representatives from all these main parties, they're literally watery, like physically useless men. Like, you know, you see these guys and you know well that if he tried to protect his wife was dead. That kind of man, like, you know, a man who wouldn't be able to protect somebody, a man who can't be a man. He's just a suit looking for power. It's disgusting to me.
No, I totally agree, and you're fully on board there with me, and I'm fully on board there with you when it comes to that. You've got these guys that have weaseled their way into politics and into positions of power that they, you know, it's something that I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it might have been Joe Rogan or maybe another podcaster that mentioned that these guys are the guys that were bullied. And you're going, yeah, that makes sense. And I know yourself as well, too, in your masculinity video, you did mention that as well, too, that these were the guys that were bullied. And it makes sense because even when you see this new guy then that's supposed to be the head of censorship, essentially, here in Ireland, you look at him and little goofball heading him, he looks like Big Board. And you're saying to yourself, like, how is this guy ascending to this position and nobody's looked and pointed at him and go, oh, you Big Board, what are you doing? You know what I mean? And that's what we need, I think, more of in the country as well. And you've got people on the other side that want to do all of the lunacy adjacent things, I suppose, and they want to link themselves in with things that just don't make any sort of sense. But like you're saying, it's a very weird and strange time that we live in, where you have people with such, you know, like they're like Grima Wormtongue from Lord of the Rings. That's now the reference there for the movies, but always very, very odd. Now, in terms of debating there, you mentioned there just in your last point and arguments and stuff like that. I find it very strange that no lefty has seemed to want to debate you live. What's your thoughts on that one? Can you give us your thoughts on that there?
I can only think that maybe they're afraid that I'm going to ask them questions that are going to make them look stupid. That's my best thought on it. I'll tell you a good one, actually. There was one leftist, actually Manning. You know that innocent boy down in Cork, the fellow who called everybody out and his face went all red when he was approached with someone. Graham Manning. We were talking about him. But he was on a podcast or a Twitter Spaces there once upon a time, and I got a private message saying, jump in here quick. So I jumped in anyway. And straight away he starts with the insult. But I asked him a question for the crack, and because I wanted, not that I really wanted his answer, because I knew he was going to give me a bullshit answer. I just wanted everyone else to hear the kind of stupid shit he's going to have to say to justify his ideology. So I asked him a question. If I have a son who was born male, what gender is he? And his answer to that was, he'll decide when he's old enough, instead of saying that the child was a boy. You know, so he said, well, that's up to the child. But then I said, I'll ask him a different question. I said, as a man, as a male, what do I need in order to have a baby? And he instead of saying a woman or a female, he said a partner. But moral of the story, these in order to stay straight with their ideology, they have to give you the most bullshit answer possible instead of telling you exactly what the reality of it is. You know, and actually on my Telegram channel earlier today, that fat, useless, crippled nun who's always watching my videos, she made a video herself about how she answers the question, what is a woman? And she said, you know, how dare anybody reduce womanhood to her reproductive organs? And I wouldn't mind, that's exactly how biology works. You're literally a woman because of your reproductive organs, not because of your clothes or your performance. Your biology informs us, your biological markers inform us of whether or not you are a man or a woman, you know. But again, these people, they can't give you the straight up answer that a woman is an adult human female. They have to give you some weird, stupid, uniquely stupid answer to justify their ideology.
I totally agree, and it's like even in your video there about masculinity, and Anna Brun, like the famous video, what I suppose I should say infamous video now, of him outside the door, and he's been asked by women, you know, what is a woman? And as you very eloquently said in your video, it's like the soul leaves the body, and he's like, ugh, you know, you can see him, he's nearly vomiting with, oh no, I know the answer, but I can't say it on camera because Mary Lou's brother now thinks he's a woman, so I'm in big trouble. You know, I wanted to get your thoughts.
But imagine in 2024, right, for all the technological advances we have, for the amount of years that we're on this planet. Like I was only looking at an image there the last day taken by some telescope looking at the furthest planet away in our solar system. And it was unbelievable. And all these galaxies and everything we're able to do. And what's the question that derails our elite population in 2024? What is a woman? You know what I mean? Like we're so like even right now, I'm talking to you on a phone, and and there's a couple of hundred people listening to it. Like we're so technologically advanced. Yet Ono Bryn would have to ask a woman if she's a woman in order to procreate with her because he's not sure about the biological markers he's faced with. Like it's such a uniquely stupid ideology, but it's also dangerous. Like these people really want your children. They can't indoctrinate us. We're too far gone and we're too old. But they know if they capture the children early enough, they can turn them into these little social justice warrior perverts, just like them. And that's the dangerous part of it all. It's utterly disgusting.
It's horrific, it is, and that's the thing. Like, you know, it's again drawing parallels with the Matrix. It's no Agent Smith when they come along and they infect other people because they're not going to procreate themselves or anything. They then decide to infect other people with these ideologies that are completely, you know, it's actually funny. I was watching True Detective again recently, the 4th season, and I don't know if you've seen that yourself. Have you seen that?
I haven't. No, I haven't seen them. No.
It's a very good series, but it's funny. I think the series released in around 2012, and Matthew McConaughey plays this character that's he's had an awful lot of things that have happened in his life. He's had a kid, but the kid is no longer alive, and he then adopts this personality and this way of thinking of like, it doesn't matter, none of it matters. So we might as well walk off into the eternal sunshine and forget about it. Let's not do any more procreation. And then you've got the flip side of it then, which is the Woody Harrelson character who's up to all sorts. And you're going, it's a nice dynamic, and you can see how both fellas bounce off each other and how they work together. And you're like, well, that's a good idea. These days, you don't see that. When people haven't got these logical ways of thinking, they want to just make you think that way. Instead of like, what we're doing here is having a casual conversation, and we make our videos and we put them out there and people agree with them. These people don't understand how, for example, I put up online the other day, I had more views, more likes, more comments than News Talk. News Talk possess 70,000 plus subscribers on YouTube. I possess less than 7,000. So how am I getting more views, more likes, more comments than a huge outlet like that? It doesn't make sense. And then I think, again, when you're looking at what we're doing, all we're doing is telling the truth. And from our point of view, a lot of people seem to be enjoying it. So that's kind of a very strange, I suppose, thing to find out as you're going along, that we have a lot of people that are in common and feel that they're in common with us. And you've got this other side then that are a very loud minority, I would argue. And that's what it is. And they've been amplified big time. And when you're thinking about amplification, is there any instances that you would kind of draw on yourself that you would say that's a very strange situation in the, I suppose, the analytics of things? Have you ever seen that before yourself, whether it be on YouTube or Twitter or whatever else?
I don't actually possess that kind of a technological brain. I'm not great with technology. And funny enough, at the start of this, I was just trying to figure out how to turn the fucking volume on to hear you. I'd love to be able to understand the numbers and the data, believe it or not. But
oodles of data, oodles of data.
oodles of data. But I find like I could put up a tweet about one thing one day and it'll do well, and then I think I'll create a cracker of a tweet another day and it'll just fall to one side. I don't know how to gauge it at all. I wish I understood more about it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's very difficult to figure out what it is, especially like this game as well too, where you're seeing certain people. But I always find usually when someone gets a massive push, all of a sudden there's a political party allegiance somewhere there, and always seems to be very interesting. One place that seems to be breaking through though seems to be on Twitter. So you've been on a couple of Twitter spaces as well, and I've been in them as well with yourself, and it's something else when you have, say, like 100 people, maybe more, that they be there listening, and then you've got like 10 people that are involved. It's like being in a pub in an awful lot of ways, because there's a conversation going on between me and you maybe, and there's something else happening with someone else, and someone else trying to interject, and you're really aware of the airtime that you're like, I want people to be able to hear this point. And especially what happened then when the kids were attacked in Dublin in November there, and that guy, again, his picture hasn't been shown in the paper or nothing like that at all, and it seems like the government wants to move on past that. But I think that's symptomatic of what's wrong with our society, and people like myself and yourself keep pulling people back to go, no, look at that, look what happened in November, and look what they tried to say. And the response from the Gardaí that night, and then obviously we saw then what seemed to be military vehicles making their way down from, I don't know where. I think you've more of an inkling as to what was going on there, and if you'd be able to share your thoughts on the Thursday that the children were attacked in town, and then also then the response to it. What was your thoughts on that whole situation?
Yeah, I felt actually, well, the attack straight away was absolutely horrendous, unbelievable. And if the government have been listening to people on the more conservative side of the spectrum over the years, as far as I'm concerned, an attack like that would have been prevented, but it happened anyway. But the crowd were rightfully angry, but they were peaceful. And as far as I'm concerned, whatever instructions the Gardaí seem to be receiving from their respective commanders, they are provoking people. And I fundamentally believe that if the Gardaí allowed the people to protest peacefully and not interfere with their freedom of movement in doing so. So I do think the Gardaí sufficiently provoked the people into a reaction. I do believe that. I remember then word started to get out about MOAGs, about APCs in the area, and I was in a pure state of disbelief, and I was asking people to verify if it's true. And I must have asked people several times throughout that live stream, throughout the Twitter spaces, will somebody absolutely make sure that's true? Because if it was true, it would have been an escalation in force that we never would have seen in the country. I don't think the army have ever been called in to do a public order incident ever. And I thought if they're being brought in now, it's an escalation of force that will have to be dealt with if you want to go down that road, because you're talking about the government using the state apparatus to oppress people in much the same way you'd see in China. But I think the defense forces then came out later on that night with an actual with a statement saying that those MOAGs were not in the area. They were part of some other exercise, and that's normal. MOAGs are always on the road, doing things up and down the country, particularly in the Curragh and whatever else you have. But they verified that they had nothing to do with the riot, we'll say, on the day. But that did really, really worry me. That put the fucking shits up me. I'll be straight up with you. But and even down in Roscrea too, and think about it, the guards are up in their game. The guards were never like this before, And I have to assume it's from himself, Drew Harris, who's trying to push this out. And I hope I didn't lose you there, did I? All right, I think Ninja's gotten the boot. He'll be back in 1 sec. But I can't see the chat either. But if you are listening to me, the guards seem to have upped their game, and it's definitely a change in tactics from what we've been used to getting with the guards over the years. And I think Drew Harris is a terrible, terrible influence on Garda Síochána. They've definitely escalated the use of force. And actually, when I think about it too, Derek Bly had a small demonstration down in Fermoy either last winter or the winter before. I think it was the winter before, actually. And they had an armed detective there watching from a distance, while women and children were in the vicinity. And that guy, as far as I'm concerned, I would have busted him down to patrol officer. You know what I mean? He behaved in such a dangerous fashion that, as far as I'm concerned, he put lives in danger that day. But no, there's been a change in policy within the Gardaí, and I think Drew Harris is instigating it. And I also think Helen McEntee is very desperate, and she doesn't give a shit how the guards gain control, as long as they gain control, even if they use unjustified force.
Yeah, well, the Roscrea incident, woke a lot of people up, and I've been speaking to people from Mayo in particular after the county council voted to sever ties then with the Department of Integration, which is a huge move, and has garnered an awful lot of attention. And Leo Varadkar, I think, is trying to downplay it. Now, those guys are over at the forum at this moment in time, both himself and Pascal Donoghue, from what I understand, and these people in politics are getting their orders from elsewhere. It was not Sean Kelly not too long ago that did an interview with Gript. And Gript, again, they put out another good video here tonight. I don't know whether it's on YouTube or it's on Twitter, where they have a senator that is asking how they got credentials to get in and ask questions. Now, that's a totalitarian state when you're looking at it from that point of view. Never mind whatever else they were doing. And you've got, say, for example, as you're saying, Helen McEntee there and Drew Harris. And just from your point of view as well, I suppose, you would have an inkling into how things go with commanding and commanders. When you have 97.8% or was it 98.7%? I think it was 98.7% voting no confidence in Drew Harris. What does that do to the profession as a whole and to the people that are working in it? What would be your thoughts on that?
Well, it's absolutely, completely toxic, 100%. You can be absolutely certain that the guards, when they're this is where it gets a little bit tricky. I would assume that the Gardaí, when they're being brought in for their morning brief to be told about the mission and how they're going to execute the mission, the riot squads and whatever else you have, I'd nearly put a fortune that none of them want anything to do with it. They don't want the hassle of going down, dragging mothers and older men away from hotels. I'd nearly put a fortune on it. They don't want anything to do it. The part that bothers me is, even against their conscience, they're going down to do it. That's the part that bothers me. But at the same time, and I know one or two guards, they basically hate their jobs. They basically hate them. I just wish that there was some sort of mechanism or some sort of way. If you don't want to go down and participate in an operation, there's ways of getting out of it. I just wish they would employ those ways and not go down. But it's dangerous that people are willing to violate their conscience and go down. You even see yourself, when these guys make a line, they're not even looking at the faces of the people they're supposed to be keeping back. They're you see the guards, they won't look at mothers, they're looking at the ground. They absolutely don't want to be there. It's just a terrible pity they won't listen to their conscience and not go down at all, you know. But that's a tough one, like.
Especially collectively as well too. Like if you collectively know within the station, for example, you know, this is wrong and there's 5 or 6 of you, you know, as you said there's ways and means, and why aren't these people speaking up as well too, and why are they getting aggressive when they go to these places? I mean, you've seen, for example, the amount of videos that Philip Dwyer's done and Derek Bloig and the Irish Inquiry, and these guys are then regularly hassled and unfairly treated, and all they're trying to do is shine a light on what's going on. And I'm sure you've seen the videos from the barracks, which is where I'll go next. I'll ask you about what you thought about the videos that came out of the barracks, given the fact that these are places that are supposed to be very revered. And especially if you're in the Defence Forces, there's someone that, or somewhere that is supposed to be very revered. Like, what's your thoughts when you see people telling an Irishman to basically get off the premises and they're housing people from another country in this place? Does that sound alarm bells off in your mind, or are you thinking something else when you see that?
It annoys me for a start. I remember that I can't remember the corporal's name, but I just remember when I watched how he dealt with Phil, I remember thinking to myself, there's a reason that fella now is on a small outpost in the Dublin mountains. You know, Kilbride is well out of the way. I said, the reason that fella's up there is because he's a useless bastard who doesn't know how to deal with people. So they said, send him up to Kilbride and make sure there's toilet roll and bed sheets. I guarantee you that's what that fella's job was to do. Toilet roll and bed sheets. But in my humble opinion, he was telling Phil to get off this military base. You know, this is a military base, get off it. As far as I'm concerned, that military installation ceased to be a military installation when they had foreigners living in it. Then it became something else completely. And as far as I'm concerned, if every single member of the population wanted to go up for a look, they should have had a right to go up for a look. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't think they were there for sinister purposes at all. I really don't. At the same time, military installations aren't places for refugees. They just aren't. And as far as I'm concerned, I'll go all the way back to the start. I don't believe the government should be engaging in anything whatsoever that could be perceived as charity. The government isn't a charity. It's not supposed to be a charity. What it's supposed to do is serve the best interests of the Irish people. And all they've been doing for the last 2 years is serving the interests of foreigners. Absolutely foreigners. It's utterly and completely wrong. And as far as I'm concerned, if the lefties, and they're the only ones screaming for this shit, if they want pet refugees in Ireland, let them open up their own doors and let them bring these people in and give them their money, their food and their resources, and let them look after it. And then I can't say a thing, because it's their house, it's their shit. If they want to invite refugees in, that's one thing. But government handing over billions and billions of euro from Sean and Patrick to Dimitri and Ahmed, who deserve none of it, who are here illegally. That's an absolute disgrace. That shouldn't happen in any country at any time, you know. But again, we need enough people to get angry about it, and hopefully that time is coming.
I do believe it is. You know, when you see the Ross Cray, you see Orlingford, when you see what's going to be happening even more so. I know we've Ferg here in the chat as well too. That's been a big part and player as well too in Dublin, and it's someone that they absolutely can't stand in the media. They don't like Ferg at all, because these are the type of guys that I was calling for, I think, nearly 2 years ago. I was like, where's our heads? You know what I mean? Like, where's our guys to say, no, I'm not having that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I would send Ferg no problem into the EU. No one, like, that's a guy that's going to go out and go, what do you think you're going to do? You know, that's the type of dude that he is. And I think the fact that he's running for election and hopefully is going to succeed, obviously, is someone that we desperately need. And not only him, but many others like him, because it's come to the point in time where, can you look at a Simon Harris there who's hunched over, who looks like he's about 80, but the chap is about 35. He looks decrepit. And I'm sure an awful lot of what these people do, and I know people say, well, that's an ad hominem and that's an attack on this guy. But the thing is that how is it that the guys that are on our side that are going out and they're doing their bit and are able to stand up to these people, why is it that we keep getting these worms of individuals into positions, and this is not what we need? But going on your point there as well, you're looking at outposts like the likes of, as you said there, Kilbride, and you're saying like what's going on here, and I think you touched on an important point there about charity. When you were talking about politicians and politics there, and what they're supposed to do, when was it your first inkling sort of like, hang on here for a second, these people are not doing what they're supposed to do? What was the first thing that sort of like, not penny drop, but certainly like, oh my God, I can't believe they've done that? What was it for you?
I tell you, when it came to politics, I was as fucking ignorant as the day is long, up until Charlie Flanagan tried to introduce hate speech laws in 2019. Before 2019, I didn't pay much attention, but as soon as Charlie Flanagan announced that he's going to attempt to criminalize freedom of speech, I said, no way, that's game on. And I won't mind. I'm one of those guys. People probably know at this stage. I use every kind of word, language, saying, terminology to express myself. And I'm a very dark humored individual. And all I thought was, this hate speech law is absolutely going to get me in trouble. And I'm not a bad guy. I don't deserve to be in trouble for the way that I communicate. And I said, well, nobody actually deserves to be in trouble for the way they communicate, you know. But that was 2019. And basically ever since then, I have developed what I can only describe as I'm trying not to curse, but as an absolute obsession. I follow these people now like a pervert. I watch everything they say on social media. I listen to every word. I read the Dáil debates. If I don't read them, I catch them live. I'm constantly watching them, because we really are in a situation, this country, where the vast majority of politicians in Dáil Éireann they're actually pushing for a totalitarian state. They really, really are. And as far as I'm concerned, COVID-19, for 716 days, the government introduced a system of textbook fascism. They literally introduced a system of textbook fascism where themselves and private enterprise got into bed together in order to coerce the behaviors of a nation for the common good. Like, that is textbook fascism. That's Pauline O'Reilly Nazi fascism. And they gave it to us for 716 days. And they discriminated against us. And they held our freedom hostage until we participated in a medical experiment. These people in Dáil Éireann will absolutely sacrifice your life as a citizen of Ireland as long as they can pursue their agenda and stay in power. I fundamentally believe that. And unfortunately, because that's how dangerous things are today, we have to watch them like hawks. And not only watch them, but depending on what they're trying to achieve, we may even have to act. So we have to pay attention all the time.
Oh, 100%. I fully agree with you there when you're saying that. I mean, it's a very astute point that you're making, which is, you know, we wouldn't have had, myself included, I had no interest in politics until probably, as you said there, around the 2019, 2020 area. And then when the whole lockdowns and stuff happened, it gave me time really to make up a channel and talk about pretty frivolous stuff as well, about like entertainment and cancel culture and all that. And that's where it began really with me. And it was just like, hang on here, you've got a person here that's trying to cancel two lads that are doing really well. She's not what I would call Irish whatsoever, and she's attacking these two guys here now to try and attach her name to it. And I've seen this stuff play out in America, so I'm not having it here now in Ireland. Do the video and you get a number of views and you're like, oh, that's doing well. And the lads are still going strong, and she's now faded off into obscurity, which is a great thing. And long live Versatile is what I would say on that one. Fair play to them. But going on a serious note, then it gets into the, as you said, then the sticky part. Then when you're going with the politicians saying, "No, you were forced to wear this mask." It was a thing initially of, if you want to wear one, go ahead, but there's no science or nothing behind it, and we're not going to attend meetings with people that are telling us that there's no science behind it, like Stephen Donnelly did when he decided not to go to that meeting that was there. Was it Professor Carl Hennigan, I think was the name of the man, was it? If I'm not mistaken, I think that was the guy. And then you're pushed upon and said, oh no, you have to wear this now. You must wear it in all places. But if you sit down for a €9 meal, you're actually not required to wear it. So once you were sitting down, it was that intelligent than you. And it was mind-boggling that people went along with that. And I think to just, you know, sort of hone in on your point there about what it was all about then, as Donnelly said towards the end, was that we don't know if we will get the cooperation. I don't know if that was his exact words, I'm paraphrasing here, but compliance, sorry, was the word, because that's a word that would stick out. Compliance. Now, when you think about compliance, you think about a dog. That's what I think about. I think about, well, is the dog compliant there? Is he gonna piddle inside the house, or is he going to know, well, if he does that, he's going outside? You know what I'm saying? That's what you're thinking. And this is the way that these people think. And I watched a podcast not too long ago as well, and you're talking about having money. And they said, when you have so much money, buying cars, that's great. You have 15 minutes there, you've got a Lamborghini, great. The buzz wears off. But telling people what to do, there's a different animal there and a different, I suppose, pleasure that these people take out of it. And to see them do what they did and then see them like do what they did, the stuff that went on is just absolutely criminal. And I know you say an awful lot online in particular as well too, of how you would like them to be treated, and I think it's pretty applicable when you're talking about certain penalties as well. So when you see these guys, and I think it's the content that we're being bombarded with what's going on, like with the housing crisis. When they talk about housing crisis, this is something that these people have created, and then they've only added to the fire by adding people then to the country, which causes more problems. But I think it goes back, like you're saying there, to the hate speech nonsense in 2019. But then again, then the way these people reacted to a flu. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on how they reacted to the flu, and again, what sort of feelings and thoughts you had with the people around you. You know, I know Tracy did a great job at the time, and it still is fighting as well too with regards to what went on. But again, even for ourselves, anyone that doesn't know Tracy and Satirical Soldier, Tracy O'Mahony has a YouTube channel as well too as a solicitor, and she put out great advice and let people know what this government were attempting to do was completely out there and it was completely wrong. And this is a case that's still been fought and still been totally supported by people because they need to be brought to justice, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And, you know, just to say about Tracy there, like, she put her head on the chopping block for a couple of years and had her name dragged through the mud. And in my humble opinion, nobody had a more positive impact on people's lives than Tracy, than informing people what their rights were, so they could actually combat the guards and combat people who were getting in their faces. Like, this country turned into an authoritarian state overnight. Like, it was unbelievable to me. And I'm not joking. I've been impacted so negatively by the fact that we live in this country where people comply as they wanted. I can't understand. Like, you would want to have very little self-worth to let somebody like Simon Harris dictate to you how you're supposed to live your life because of a flu. I could not understand. Like, they literally desecrated the inviolability of your home. They told you who could be in your home and for how long, and when you could leave your home, how far you could travel away from your home, the reasons you needed to produce if you were caught outside your bubble. Absolutely unbelievable how people just accepted being treated like a slave. Like, did you really need legislation, laws and punishments to tell you not to cough in someone's face? You know what I mean? Like, were you that much of a docile citizen? Were you that much of a fool that you would allow politicians to actually invade? They literally invaded your life like the creepiest pervert who ever lived. They literally invaded your life, and you allowed them to do so, and you weren't even offended by it. I can't understand that mindset. And I think about America as well, the amount of people that fled California to go to Florida because they valued their freedom. They had self-worth. You know, they had a bit of self-esteem. And over here, people just, like 93% of the population, I'm led to believe, complied fully, you know, paid their €9 meals. I had to laugh. Tracy used to make a point not to stand. You know those yellow footprints on the ground where you're supposed to stand? I remember Tracy used to treat them like lava. She used to fucking walk away from them because she couldn't stand the notion that we were being so managed, so mollycoddled by the state, that to stand in that would have been a crime to her. And I was the same as well. Some things I just couldn't do. But the levels of anxiety and stress day in and day out for 716 days, being surrounded by the most compliant, self-policing slaves. And I thought these people valued freedom. They're doing their fuck. Like I used to try and argue with my friends at work at the time, telling them that your freedom should matter more than Simon Harris, who's trying to coerce you into doing something for the so-called common good. I may as well have been talking Swahili to these people.
Yeah.
Soldiers, like I still, even to this day, I'm so angry and resentful by the fact that the Irish people who suffered for centuries when their freedom was robbed by a government of treasonous criminals, they just said the government is doing a good job. Literally unbelievable. And you know something, sorry now for the rant, but I couldn't wait to get out of the army, because the notion of serving these people actually made me sick. I was repulsed being surrounded by so many people who just utterly and completely complied. It repulsed me.
No, I fully agree, and I know you said sorry for the rant there. That's exactly what I'm looking for that one so far. As like when I'm asking, it's something I want to hear your idea, because you know what the funny thing is, I suppose on another tangent, I suppose I was watching the Bill Burr podcast the other day, and he was talking to Adam Driver. He was supposed to be interviewing Adam Driver, but you know it was nice of Adam Driver to pop in and give a couple of minutes to interview Bill Burr, because Bill Burr talked for most of the stream. So I was saying to myself, well, that's something I'm going to think about now in future interviews to make sure the guest has the floor, especially when they're brought on, you know. But yes, no, I fully agree with you, and I'm totally in agreement when you're saying 716 days that these people bullied people around through various means. I mean, you know, you had the article as well too. I remember it well. This stuff is all seared into my mind. You know, minister declares war on the unvaxxed.
Yeah.
I remember that like yesterday, and people want to move on past that. And it's when you're talking to people now in everyday life that there seems to be a lot of people seem to leave the door open nowadays rather than at the time. If you would have said to somebody that this smelled fishy or it was something was going on, it was heresy. But now there's people that are leaving the door open, like insofar as I was talking to someone not too long ago, and they were speaking about someone young passing. And I said, it's very strange that, isn't it? It seems to be happening more often now. And they said, do you think it's the Voldemorts? And I went, well, if I'm being honest with you, I said, I do. I says, to be quite honest, it says there are companies that says with criminal histories. So I wouldn't see why not. It couldn't be to do with something like that, especially with the increase. And these are things then, like these people are having to then go home. And like I said, these people I speak to, they go home then. And I'm saying, how do you not feel any anger that you're someone that took that? And you now have been spoken to by me, not that I'm any sort of expert, but that I'm going, yeah, it does sound fishy, it does. And here I am still 3 years later, didn't take it, I'm fine. You know, are you not going home going, what did I do that for? I'm after taking a gamble. Like,
yeah.
I've met one or two people, to their credit, that have actually turned around and said, yeah, that was a bad move. And I've met others then that have absolutely stuck their foot into the sand and said, no, planted their foot in the sand and said, I am not moving from where I am at. It's insane. Yeah. It's insanity. Now, I understand people don't want to look stupid and they don't want to be duped. And to me, they have been. But, you know, as I said, you've got people out there with other tragic stories. I've heard a number of tragic stories where, and this is what gets me more, and I think what fires me up a little bit more. You know, my life wasn't too hindered, I would say, over the last few years. Now, it wasn't an awful lot of other ways. But I heard about people that, for example, and when I say hindered, I'm very fortunate to not have lost anybody during those times, but I know people that did, and I know people that weren't able to go to the hospital, were refused entry, were brought up to places with plexiglass where they have a member of their family inside of a nursing home who has all sorts of mental ailments, whether it be dementia or whether it be Alzheimer's, whether it be something like that. And these people were left on their own. And that's what disgusts me more, and it makes me feel even more angry then, because I'm taking someone else's feeling and I'm feeling an empathy towards it, because if that was me, I would be so consumed with rage. And these other people are consumed, and I was like, I just don't know if I was in their shoes, you know, if you would then run for some sort of council or election, because that would be what would tip it over for me, I think, you know. And when we're speaking about that sort of stuff as well, I'm sure you've heard it all as well too, between yourself and Tracy, where people had a number of different things that went on in their lives. So, you know, it's a very dark time, I think, in human history, and I think you hit the nail on the head when these things have to be remembered. And you know, it's like your famous phrase now that I always talk about, and it's the government want to criminalize you for noises coming out of your face. Yet these are the same people then that told you must take this to attend a cinema or a gym or a pub. It's insane.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely unreal. Do you know, I'll say one thing as well, actually. Well, I'll say a couple of things. I do know people who complied. We'll say who I know people who took the vaccine. I know people who wore the masks. I know people who complied with the whole lot. But at the same time, in their spirit, when they had free time, they actually protested as well. You know, and I want to recognize that there was definitely a small, fairly small, but still a small number of people who complied because there was a strong element of coercion behind it, but protested the fact that they were coerced into doing it. And, you know, they kind of deserve an honorable mention, to be fair.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you a good one. And this came in the form of an email. I've had a lot of people contact me privately over the years because they saw my videos, they appreciated what I said, and they felt like they wanted to just tell their story to me, you know. But there was one situation there, and this annoyed me now, and I want this to annoy other people too, to be honest with you, because it's gruesome. But there was a woman who came here from Africa, and she came over as a refugee, and one of the conditions of her being in Ireland was she had to give certain documents to whatever department to justify her staying in Ireland. So she had to go back and forth with documents, and because there was level 5 lockdowns, she couldn't go too far. But she had to go to the post office because of the lockdowns. But she wasn't able to wear a mask, and it put her in an awful predicament where there was a security guard on the door who kept asking her, you know, where's your mask and what's your legitimate reason for not wearing a mask? Well, she didn't want to say. But at the same time, again, these documents, it was very important that she get the documents delivered. But she told me, and this is terrible again, and you have to remember that these security guards who confront you are fucking strangers. Mm-hmm. But the reason this woman was in Ireland is for an awful long period of her life, she was gang raped. And the kind of trauma that she was put through for so many years, it made it psychologically impossible for her to have something covering her face. And when this security guard approached her saying, why aren't you wearing your mask? Can you imagine the feeling of pure and utter dread?
Yeah.
Trying not to tell this guy, well, I suffered this kind of trauma when I was back in Africa. But this happened all over the country. People suddenly became this kind of authoritarian figure where they felt they had a right to your private medical information. And to me, it's such a trespass against your humanity that I found it unbelievably intolerable. And an awful lot of people never thought about this, particularly the lefties, who, as far as I'm concerned, are vermin. And I know you're listening, you are vermin to me. To me, you are subhuman vermin. You are nothing. You are scumbags. And those lefties in particular felt like they had a license to go around looking at people. Pull your mask over your nose. Where's your mask? Why aren't you complying with this? Why aren't you doing that? But I just wanted to tell that story, that an awful lot of people did go through seriously traumatic and horrendously traumatic time for 716 days over what amounted to be a flu. What a period of treason, you know?
And then, like, you have what comes out yesterday, which is Eamon Ryan, goofball in chief, standing outside the airplane, a massive airplane that lands from, as your man in America would have said, China. It comes from China. And these are people that are welcoming this massive plane and welcoming a man from a country that supposedly left all of this stuff out. Now, it guaranteed this. Now, this is where it got me as well too. This stuff could get around, right? This is how intelligent it was. It could get around a level 5 biolab. It could make its way out the door there, out the gap. It went. But if you were wearing a cloth mask with a leopard print on it, knew you were all right. You knew you were safe there. You know. Just so you know, if you were someone that bought into that, by the way, because like you're saying there, Satirical Soldier, there were an awful lot of people that were forced into situations, and like you're saying about that lady, you know, horrific, traumatic situations. And I know people would say, well, it was just a mask and you just had to wear it. It was the symbolism then that ended up becoming, which was you had people, as you said there, running around and telling you, you have to wear that. I take great pleasure nowadays of shouting across streets at people, hey, that's illegal now to wear that mask. And they all looking frightened, looking, what? And I'm saying, take it off. You've taken about 15 of these injections. You don't need it anymore. Get rid of it. Stop now. You know? But when you see, as I said, Goofball and Chief Eamon Ryan with the massive plane out at the airport, like what's going through your head there when you see those types of images? What do you think when you see that?
I'm not joking. Eamon Ryan, and I don't want you to lose you've one of my favorite YouTube channels going. I don't want you to lose it, so I have to be careful.
I'm also on Rumble.
Honest to God, though,
I hear you.
Eamon Ryan is a tard of the the highest degree. I mean, this fella is like Goofball in Chief. If that's the worst possible insult. It's not even an insult, to be honest. It's really a description of this fella.
Yeah.
He is so fundamentally handicapped, like he is, you know, like he just is. Like this fella bans turf, and he tells everyone in the country that 10 families are going to share a car, you know, and you're going to suffer this way, and you're going to suffer that way, and we're going to close down peat factories and close this down and close that down. And I'll be back in 5 minutes. I'm just going to this Boeing 747 that's acting as a taxi for the communist who's coming to visit me. You know, you can't make sense of this shit, like.
No, and I mean, I suppose what I'll ask you then as well too, because obviously I'm from Dublin. But what's the perception of the Green Party? And I suppose it's a two-pronged question here. I know probably the first one probably be a fairly easy answer, but the first question I'm asking: what's the perception of the Green Party across Ireland, outside of Dublin? It's not a high perception here in Dublin. Let me be honest with you with that. And then the second question I suppose I'm going to ask with that is: do you know anybody personally? And this is something I always ask people: do you know anybody that votes for the Green Party?
I swear to God, I have no idea how the Green Party even exists. I don't know anybody anywhere who ever voted for the Green Party. Anybody. And even just today, I saw on Twitter Roderick O'Gorman put up whatever spiel about making the Constitution a gender neutral document, you know, and he got about 3 likes and about 85 comments calling him every sorts of queer, you know, every sorts of name that he's a this and he's a that. Like who in your right mind, like you, surely to God, someone would look at Eamon Ryan and think, I'm going to vote, like he represents me. That's a guy who switched on. I'm going to give that fella my vote. I like the cut of his jib. His policies are brilliant. You know, take my car off me, Eamon. I mean, who's going to vote for someone who's going to value the fucking trees before he values your rights, your freedoms, your opportunities, and your right to prosperity? Like it's a suicidal vote. And again, I don't know anybody who votes for these people.
They're not one person do I know that votes for them. And you know, I'll say it to you again, like with the perception of people outside of Dublin, like what is the view of the Green Party with you guys? Like, are you guys asking the same questions in the local towns, villages, communities? Like, are you guys all going, who's voting for these people? Surely
I'm not sure. As far as I'm aware, around this general location where I am, I'm kind of in the middle of nowhere. But I talk to a few people anyway, like, you know, farmers. Yeah. They really think Eamon Ryan, and these guys are all cutting turf and selling turf, you know. They think Eamon Ryan is allegedly. Supposedly, but they think that fella is actually stupid. Like, I mean, It's not even that he's crazy, but they really truly believe that it's like he's a 50-year-old man with the brain of a 6-year-old child. Like, they really think this fella is truly stupid, and they just flat out disregard that he even exists. Like, to these people, that fella doesn't even exist. He's a Green Party ghost.
But that's the thing, though, I'd say is the huge difference between Dublin and every other county, which is a thing, like, you know, unfortunately, Dublin has become this juggernaut insofar as a city, and it's becoming like Gotham City, really. That's the way I always describe it. And you're seeing some of the democratic states over there in America, and you're like, oh, Dublin's following those same trends now. And it will be, you know, I can see people in my generation for sure, and the one after them that will want to leave the county and just be like, I need to get out of here, I need to go to Wicklow, or I need to go to Wexford. And you know, it's going to be more difficult then if Dublin people are going to those areas, it's going to be difficult then for you to be able to buy land, build a house, the whole lot, without, and I'm talking about people from those areas, likes of Wexford or, you know, Laois or Wicklow, or wherever it might be. You're going to have blow-ins from Dublin as such, and I'd be very much so on the fence, not on the fence, I should say, about being called a blow-in to a place. But not only will they be coming, but also everyone else that these people have left into the country. And you're going to create a huge issue then across the place. And I think that's what people are seeing across the country now. And then you're looking at the farming side of it. And it's something I admire. I admire what you've just said about people in the country, that how they view Eamon Ryan as if he didn't exist. Because I think that is the most effective thing when it comes to these people. If you think that these people don't exist and you don't comply with any of the nonsense that they do, you're onto a winner. Stephen Donnelly said it himself when he was in the Shannon talking about compliance on public transport, that people wearing masks. Didn't think he'd get it. That's the important thing when it comes to bogs, when it comes to turf, peat, whatever it might be, coal, is that people are saying, no, I'm just going to do what I'm doing. I have to admire it. I have to admire it.
Yeah. It actually, even when I think about it there now, there's a guy who lives very close to me, and he has a butcher as well up the road.
Allegedly.
He's an older man, but I try not to talk politics with too many normies, we'll say, because I don't want to frighten the shite out of them, like, you know. But I find that these guys now were saying to me, like, they say to me, who do you vote for? They say I can't vote for Sinn Féin because they're wankers as well, like, you know. But even that's a good sign, and it's all right when you're talking to people who aren't really political, who still have enough awareness to know that, you know, Mary Lou MacDonald is a fool, you know, and Eamon Ryan is a fool, Leo Varadkar is like, all these people are fools. But unfortunately, there is a void there that I hope is filled with patriots, and it might take a while, but, you know, we'll have to persevere, because like you said at the very start of this, all we have to do is tell the truth. It's simple as that. Like, I don't have to lie. I have no reason to lie, you know. And to be honest, I hate liars anyway. Like, you know, why would I lie? I say it as it is. And I find an awful lot of people on this side of the fence, the people who value freedom, we'll just say it as it is, you know, nothing to hide.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, and that's the thing, and I find that that's the most interesting thing, is that I meet enough people then that are super duplicitous, and they'll be saying, oh yeah, no, and they bought into it, and then the same token they go, oh, I didn't buy into this, and you're looking going, that's mad. And then you get the other people then that were like, I think the government, even though I've gotten an awful lot of hardship over the last couple of years, and like I said, family members that are no longer with them, and they've been denied visits and been denied being able to go to the funeral and having to limit to 6 people, will still turn to you and say, but the government did their best, and the government did their best, and I would say, no, I disagree. And a lot of the time, it is a normie, and the normie's choice then is, I either ask him what he means by that, and we open a can of worms, or I don't say anything, and I'll just look the other way. And I would say probably half the time you get people that will look the other way, and the other half people will go, well, what do you think? And I think that that's where we're starting to see a gap to be formed. And I think that that's very important. Whereas, again, 2 years ago, if you were questioning any of it, it was heresy. Now you're seeing people, and you're hearing people going, hang on, what party should I be voting for? Like, I get people that regularly get in touch with me, whether it be my personal life or, you know, other than that, or either through the channel, and say, who should we be voting for? And I've always, you know, I think even since I started the channel, I've always been very wary of, I don't want to be giving someone too much of a push either, because I'm like, well, you know, you could have a National Party situation, which at the time I was like, I like what they're doing, but they have a couple of things to fix up. And then, of course, then they bounce Philip out of party, and I was like, all right, that's them. They're finished. you know, and that was just my opinion. And I call things as I see them. And I think that probably rubs a lot of people the wrong way. And like personally, I don't really care. But you know, when I hear and see people and talk to people and they say, "Oh, you should be on this, that, and the other," and I go, "Well, I like what I'm doing here because at least you know from me, it's unfiltered truth, and there's no one sitting behind me going, can't say that, can't do this." Like YouTube's policies, they update every month, and I'm sure you look at them as well as I do, and you're looking at them and they're the most inane, ridiculous stuff because you're going, that's not even been applied to people like, you know, massive channels H3 when they were calling for all sorts of very aggressive things. I can't mention it, but they can, and they're just left alone. Now I can see a shift in YouTube over the last while a little bit because thanks to Twitter, because now YouTube has to compete with Twitter, so I suppose they probably relaxed a little bit. But you know, I think a lot of people have changed their minds in the last few years, and I think that that's a positive thing. And going back to the point you were saying there about political representation, I think that's key next. I think you're starting to see politicians, particularly outside of Dublin, and this is a fascinating situation. You're starting to see them go rogue from the party, and is a councillor Noel Thomas there, who has said recently that Micheál Martin isn't his leader, he isn't his Taoiseach. What a thing to say. But my point is always this: why aren't these guys gathering together and challenging that leadership? For the very reason that if you try to, at the very least, make a ruckus about, I'm attempting to take the leadership off him, what's going to happen? And who's going to show you who's supporting him? That's the important thing, I would say, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. I spoke to him actually. You know, I keep that to myself, to be honest with you, because he's somewhat valuable. I tell you, I give it to him. He has a pair of ghoulies on him, you know. And I know there was a second councillor as well in Galway who imagine this for a minute, right? Two Galway councillors who stand with the people they're supposed to be representing, right? They literally, the people who put them into power, they're standing with them. And what happens? They organise a raid on the two boys' houses at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then you have another Fianna Fáil councillor that is pulling the goalies off himself, talking about shooting people in the face who rioted up in Dublin. And he,
a non-Irish person, by the way.
You know what I mean? Like, nothing happens to this guy. And now, and you know something, I've often thought about the likes of Graham Carey, who's now being, like, he's up for incitement to hatred, the 1989 Act, you know. Like, what do you call this foreigner who's saying, Jesus, we need to shoot them in the face or kick the head of them until they're dead? Like, the double standard is unbelievable. And again, who gets in trouble? Who has their homes? Who, like, your home, mind, your home raided by the guards and your devices seized for what? For standing with the people of your community who put you into power in the first place. Again, we said it a while ago, or at least I said it a while ago. This is a fascist state. This is what happens in a fascist state. And you know, since I said, where are you lefties? You absolute scumbags, you useless, liary, confused vermin, quarterbreds. Jesus, I hate you.
Quarterbreds. Now you're hitting the nail on the head. You're hitting the nail on the head there when it comes to it. You know, you've got milk toast comments is what I would say from councillors in Galway, and these are the types of this is the type of treatment, I should say, that these people are receiving. Yeah, as you said, you have a Fianna Fáil councillor. Now they're trying to keep that stum now at the moment. They're hoping that story goes away, but little did they know there's more videos coming from various different people, and they're certainly going to be keeping an eye on that one. And he hasn't been removed from the party, and I think that occurred, what was it, 2-3 weeks ago? I think that statement occurred. And then he tried to backpedal on it. You've got members of Sinn Féin as well too, who are caught on camera calling people racist, and they were on phone calls with people as well, and they're saying to people that they were idiots and everything like that for believing that the flu was something that was totally blown out of proportion over the last couple of years. According to these same councillors, that the flu actually was on a gap year. It went on its jolliers, you know, went on holidays for 2 years. But but isn't it crazy when you think that you have people that are standing with the people and saying, no, we can't accept anymore, and they're raided then. And that's, I suppose, where, you know, people that are, and I'm sure there's a couple of glowies here as well too watching in this evening to see if there's any comments they don't like. But imagine getting up in the morning and putting that uniform on and thinking to yourself, I'm going to go down to this counsellor and I'm going to search through his house because he said the most milquetoast things. Yet, if another fella above over there, he was telling people he wants to assault them until they're no longer alive, and he's been left alone. Is there no point in time that you're a rational thinking individual and go, hang on here for a sec? You know, it just always amazes me, it does, when people are together, and the lack of courage in an awful lot of people that they won't say, this is wrong. This is not.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely dead right. It is. I don't mind. There's a defense forces. What do they call them again? Value. A defense forces value. They call it moral courage. You know.
Yeah.
But if there's one thing the defense forces lacked throughout COVID, it was moral courage. And if there's one thing the Garda Síochána is lacking today, it's moral courage. And again, I have no doubt in my mind that an awful lot of those guards are doing things they don't want to do, but they're just doing them anyway. The go along, this go along to get along attitude, it's dangerous again. Like, you're just, all you are is that you're a threat. If you're just a person who goes along to get along, who's just doing his job, you're just a threat. Like, you know, you're a weasel. And I've no time for you, to be honest.
I've met people as well, like in my own life as well, that, and again, you know, through the channel and stuff, that would say that, you know, they were a person that was, again, not going along to get along, but certainly like blissfully ignorant about what was happening. And they were like, you yanked us out of this, and now all they can see is like, again, to reference the Matrix again, the ones and zeros of what's happening. It's interesting what happened to the Wachowskis, isn't it? The Wachowski brothers. It's almost like that those guys were pulled in and told, now you've done something very naughty, you know, and it's been referenced by guys, and it will be in the future. It's funny how that predictive programming happens, and you know, I've even seen a movie there recently there, and a trailer for it in America. I haven't seen the movie, but I've seen the trailer for it, is what I mean. And it's called Civil War. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, these are the very same threats that were made upon the American people 2 years ago, for example, where they were like, you guys don't possess F-15s or F-22s. And I'm like, holy shit, because I know what an F-15 is and an F-22 is because of Transformers, and I know what they can do. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm so immediate that's just looking at these things going, holy shit, you're actually openly telling your own people, yeah, we're going to come after you if it's game on, and you're looking at them going, wow, what a thing to say in this day and age where that's forever now, that you can't ever forget that that's happening. And we see the same things here in this country. I know sometimes I'll dip in and out talking about America, but you see the same sort of logic applied here. When was the wokeism something that you noticed that happened here in Ireland? Like, when did it really take over? Was it 2019?
Jesus.
Or was it before that?
Do you know something? That to me now actually is a difficult question. But I tell you what really helped to expose it was that documentary by Matt Walsh, the whole "What is a Woman" thing. Like, you know, it really that simple question again, that should be the easiest question on the face of the planet, and how they managed to use that as the litmus test to tell if you're talking to a handicap or not. It was genius, absolutely genius. but that it was definitely that documentary anyway. And the simplicity of that question and using that as a litmus test, I really did start to understand wokeism at that stage. And when it piques your interest, you know, you tend, like, I bought books on it now. I've read about it. I've listened to, I don't know how many hours of podcasts on it, like, you know, and now I just hear certain words like diversity, equity, progressive, inclusion, even equality. Like, there's a list of words now that as soon as you hear them, you know you're talking to a Marxist straight away, and you know what they're trying to achieve. But
if you see the word
absolutely, when you, fuck me, I hate that word. They may as well be announcing themselves as a murdering pervert, you know, as a communist again. But like, and Ireland, I suppose, 36,000 NGOs, is it? You know what I mean?
A very high amount.
Pride flags and trans flags and flags for Palestine and everything bar the Irish flag. You know, and I have to laugh as well. Like, every time you see a leftist on the street trying to support an idea or a piece of legislation, what ends up happening after a while is you're less free. Like, think about it. with the politicians there and hate crime legislation. 110 politicians in Ireland voted. The vast majority, 110 politicians in Ireland, fully supported by the leftists, and the leftists are supposedly all for human rights. But 110 politicians voted to send you to prison for noises that come from your face. Yeah. That's where we're at, like, you know. And again, every time these politicians go to Dáil Éireann and vote on something, we're less free. It just so happens to be that we're less. Every time some asshole politician votes, I'm somehow less free. And I know for a fact the lefties supported it from the start and keep supporting it all the time. It's such a weird, like, they call it a death cult at the end of the day, you know. Communism is a death cult, wokeism, socialism, social democrats, it's all the same shit. It's just a death cult, you know. And at this stage, if people don't realize that, again, to vote left is to vote for your own suicide, like, there's something wrong with you. Again, why are we looking at Eamon Ryan in politics? Eamon Ryan is a symbol of a death cult, as far as I'm concerned. And so is Breach Smith and Holly Cairns and all these. Like, they're all woke at this stage. To vote woke, you're voting to kill yourself.
Well, when it comes to the votes, as you're saying there as well, like, it is an interesting thing now over the last few years when you're seeing people start to question things. And that's why I always reference that, you know, who votes for these people? You see, when you have the likes of RTE or Virgin Media and see people before profit that are constantly on that, and you've got a number of people that highlight that there. For example, Toby that does be here, Mick that does be here as well. They'll highlight what the actual percentage these people hold within the government, and they're saying, how are they getting so much airtime? It's actually totally disproportionate from what they actually represent, and it's been peddled to you incessantly. And I think that's where the apparatus itself is at a crossroads. It doesn't know what to do, because we're entering into a new time, I think, of our new age, I suppose I should say, of social media and the likes of the news. Like, I don't watch RTE, I don't watch Virgin Media, I don't buy a paper. That was the pastimes of my parents and my grandparents, and that's done now. So when you have the memes, and the meme situation is so effective that NGOs that have spent millions, and indeed some of them billions, of course, and have been spent upon them, can't fight someone that has drawn up a picture like you do sometimes, like the one with the whore and stuff like that. You know, they cannot argue with that. They can't argue with a 5-minute or a 10-minute or even a 2-minute video from yourself, and you're like, I'm out there now and I'm walking up the road and I think a woman is a woman, I'm far right. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and you're going, that's so effective because it cuts through so effectively. And I think that we'll get to the stage within the next 5 to 10 years where they'll try and turn it all off. They'll try and go back to the Stone Age or something like that, because they're like, I would imagine that they're very panicked at this moment in time, because they even see the address that Javier Milei gave in Davos there. And I don't know what the gig is with him. I really don't. He's hard to pin, because I don't know whether he went there as a Trojan horse and said, yeah, guys, I'm all inside of you. And then he eviscerates them then economically there. You're like, okay, right, that's an interesting thing to do. I would say the company that he keeps is a bit suspect, considering that there was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles under the ground of New York City only last week, and they brushed past that one pretty quickly. They're like, that didn't happen. And this is the thing, some of the biggest streamers that I see and follow, like, didn't do videos on it. They did mention it in a stream, but they never did a video of it. Some people would say, oh, you're a hypocrite, Ninja, you didn't do one yourself. But I'm not American. If someone was under the sewers here in Ireland and they were having like high chairs and mattresses with stains on them, you best believe I'm making a video about that. So
if they had curly locks down past their shoulders.
That's exactly it. And you know, the funny thing is like, you know, seeing Keith Woods there as well too, that's gaining a lot of traction as well online, and you're seeing momentum shift for a lot of different reasons. And I think even the Ukraine situation, I think that was another big faux pas from these people, because I now look at everything that happened in history and I'm saying to myself, hang on for a sec, like, I don't know whether you've viewed the new movie The Covenant or anything. That's a Guy Ritchie movie. I'm a big fan of Guy Ritchie. But he made this movie, and it's about a soldier in Afghanistan, or is it Iraq? It's one or the other. It is. I can't remember which one. The countries, when it comes to those countries, I'm like, it's interchangeable for me. They all think the same thing. Anyway.
It's desert shithole, yeah.
It's a desert shithole. So anyway, and that's very disrespectful. I don't care. But they talk up this film and they say, you know, it's a story about compassion, and I'm saying, right, let's have a look. But the crux of the story is that the guy that's the translator for the Yanks is actually a former dealer of H, we'll just say, right? A bad guy. So the movie progresses and you're supposed to feel sympathy for this fella. I feel nothing. I'm like, the guys on the other side, I actually would look at them and go, hang on for a second. These fellas over here that are, after being invaded by America for their resources and all that, probably have a bit of a concern, a legitimate one. And yet then you see them people that are running around their country going, oh yeah, I stand with Palestine and I stand with Israel, and where do you stand on that? And I say to them, I couldn't give a modicum of a shit about these places. I care about Ireland and the future generations that are going to happen and occur in this country. People can't get their heads around that. When I'm going, yeah, no, we'll view a movie and I'll have me thoughts about it. But when it comes to the Middle East, I don't care what's going on over there. I care what's going on about here. And have you met people in your own life or indeed online that they can't understand that? Sure, they can't. They can't understand how you can go, I don't give a shit about what's happening in the Middle East, even though you've been there. You're going, I don't care. I've done my time. You know?
It's so, again, I'd love to know psychologically what's going on with these people, because I can't understand it for the life of me. But like, if I gave a shit about Palestine, I'd go there. Or if I gave a shit about Israel, I'd go there. Like, you know, no amount of whinging on the street or waving flags or lying down on the ground half naked pretending I'm a prisoner is going to change what's going on over in the Middle East. Like, you know, or these fellas who buy these Shemax or these fucking scarves, they're thinking that they're making a difference. That kind of virtue signaling, again, it's so repulsive. It's absolutely repulsive. You useless bastards. If you really feel like, I'm not even asking these people to go over with an AK-47 and kill people. Go over with a medical kit and save a few lives for yourselves. And then when you come back over to Ireland, we'll think you're great. Like, but otherwise, shut your face, like, you know.
It's one of the things that I often say online to people that they like to boast about. I'm standing with Palestine, or I'm standing with Israel. I say to them, okay, when do you join the front line? When are you going?
Yeah.
I stand with Ukraine.
Honestly,
okay, when are you going? When are you there? Let me know. And then you've got a couple of guilt balls that are out there that'll go, you just once signed with the Russians. No, I don't really give a shit about what they do. I'm caring about what's here. But one less of you in my country is great news. And they're like, oh, I don't understand that. And I do, because I'm telling you, you need to go to the front line if you care about that place so much more. I'm just going to jump into the chat here for a second, because I'm not going to ignore them for a little while. Right. Derek Madison here says, Independence Celebration, GPO, Sunday, see you there. There's another big protest that's occurring very soon as well, too. There's going to be a big one, I think, on February 5th, I think there is, if I'm not mistaken. Charm Superiors in here says, UK and Ireland need to stand together against this invasion, plus those whom are complicit. Now, the UK are an interesting, I'm going to get your thoughts on the UK in a minute, Satirical Soldier, but the UK are in an interesting situation at the moment there, that they want to send all these people to Rwanda. And I'm in favour of that. I'm like, holy moly, I agree with the Brits on something here now. That, you know, personally, I think they should be sent to Rwanda on dinghies. You know,
I'm half thinking Rwanda might even be fucking too close.
Too close. Going back, but the next one there is too. Humans Aces, fantastic guest ninja. You should get the soldier on regularly. Yeah, I'm sure we can absolutely do that. That's no bother at all. The chat are showing an awful lot of love here for a Satirical Soldier. They're massive fans that are in here. So I'm trying to jump through there. So Sivna Easton says, hey Ninja, hey Satirical. We've got Mark Zuckerberg. That's a great. The chat names are brilliant. They are. You should do some streams. You'd get some brilliant chat names there. Says even and all with the same here. Remember to, I know it's an hour and 40 minutes in now, but if you can add Ninja Night, that'd be great there. A lot of people that are loving your oodles comments on the video in itself, then the oodles of data. That was actually something that Stephen Donnelly stated, by the way, just as we all know.
Oh, that was a quote.
What have we got here? There, Art. Yeah, that was a quote. That was actually a quote. Art Hostage says, who was the guy yesterday? Explosion, Polish, Lithuanian pipe thing. Video coming on that soon. But what was your thoughts on that? Again, something I say in the video, I suppose it's a bit of a spoiler there to be people here that would say, I'm not watching the video now, Ninja. But I actually say in the video, that would have been headline news for probably a year, 2 years maybe, about a bomb going off. There's people that I spoke to today and they didn't have a clue what happened. That's insane. Yeah. That happened in our country and no one's talking about it. Like, you had a fella that was down in Dublin city centre, wherever it was, in a bomb disposal uniform, whatever it might be. Essentially, I would say he looks like Jeremy Renner from the Hurt Locker, going around with an RC vehicle, And I'm saying this is not Beirut, this is Dublin that this is happening in. Like you've obviously got expertise in the army. Like, what was your thoughts when you saw something like that?
I tell you what I heard today, actually, a rumor is that whatever guy was killed in the explosion was actually trying to make a viable IED, a viable improvised explosive device, and he made a fuck up, and it killed him. But
allegedly,
supposedly, yeah,
it's
possibly.
a rumor. You did preface that with saying it was a rumor.
Yeah, but no, like every now and again, the bomb disposal unit are called into action for or devices, we'll say, or suspected devices. I know particularly with the likes of Dublin Airport, they're called in. 9 times out of 10, it's nothing. It's not what they call viable. But this is the first time in a little while now they came across something that was viable, that required a controlled demolition, you know. And that is a big deal, and we should be talking about it. But unfortunately, what seems to happen in Ireland, and I've noticed it the last while, anytime there is a truly heinous crime, it'll get a quick look in the media and then they'll bury it, you know. And if it wasn't for the likes of us on this side talking about the 2 lads up in Sligo, or Aisling Murphy, or the children who were stabbed up in Parnell Street, like if we weren't highlighting this stuff on a regular basis, it would just go by the wayside, you know. And this is another example again of a genuinely critical incident that took place in Dublin that for some reason no one's talking about. This is big news, like, you know. And I said it there earlier, Ireland seems to be slowly going the way of Sweden. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and the last thing you want to be in this country, you don't want your people to become desensitized to violence, because then it suddenly out of nowhere becomes acceptable. It's unacceptable. It should never be acceptable.
But that's what that's a great point that you're at the making there now, because that's actually taking me mind back then to the Thursday then, where then you have the media and indeed the politicians that'll pearl clutch and say, we can't believe Gardaí were assaulted. And I'm going, well, I can, because like you're saying, that you've desensitized people so much that they think nothing of it. Like you hear people talk about, I don't know whether is it Lugs Murphy or Lugs Brannigan or whatever the famous name that goes around, that he was a guy that was a hard copper, and you know, if you didn't do what you were told, you got a boot or whatever like that. And you're going, there's no such thing nowadays. And listen, I'm no fan of people in uniform telling you that they're afraid of GSOC. I think that GSOC are very important, because with the way they wanted the 3 protesters and people on our side of the fence for a very long time, I think it's important that they do have someone that's over their shoulder, because I think it's super dangerous when you're telling them, no, you're off the leash there, lads, you can just wade into people. I think that's very, very bad. But when you're saying about desensitization, I think that's what's happened. Like, think about the fact, and I know you do, but like the fact that the information that regarded Aisling Murphy and what happened to her and how her demise was met, that wasn't known until a full year, until after that happened. And that was only because it got out through the courts, and it would have eventually gotten out through people, whether they be jurors or witnesses, whatever it might be. But I thought it was absolutely incredible, not in a positive way, but in a negative way, that for a year they were able to conceal the manner in which that lady died. And and because it was a year out, it ebbed and flowed very little at the time. People were like, yeah, that happened last year. That's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, whoa. Go ahead.
No, it's a bad place we're in. And I just, since you were talking there, I was thinking about that interview Kitty Holland did, where she said that we, the media, are the gatekeepers of the information, and we're only going to give out the information we believe the public will be able to handle. You know, so now they're deciding what we hear instead of just telling us the situation and letting us decide for ourselves. And again, it's indicative of the kind of nanny state, you know, these gatekeepers, these elitist animals is what they are, as far as I'm concerned. And again, it adds to the huge problem we have in this country, you know.
Oh, it does. No, absolutely. It very much so does. And I mean, the fact that the media are out there saying those things, I think is very telling. I mean, it clearly bothers them, the fact that you have a YouTube channel, that I have a YouTube channel, that others have YouTube channels and have reach, and that is totally exposing an awful lot of the lies that are told, or is essentially actually bringing up things. And some people would say to me at times, Ninja, that incident happened 6 months ago, and I tell you, but it's pertinent to what's going on now. And I wanted to remind you and let you not forget. So then people then say, "Oh yeah, 6 months later, yeah, remember that there, and remember that went on." And that's it. Like you said, we're getting bombarded with so much. And these people, I mean, Kitty Holland is known online now as Kitty Smollett because of the whole situation that happened there in, where was it, Ashtown, I think, somewhere. And she was saying that a camp was attacked. But what's weird to me as well, Satirical Soldier, and again, I'll get your thoughts on this, is that the media are nowhere to be seen when patriots and nationalist tents are burned out here in this country when they were after being staying in certain areas. But they're all over these, what they're calling arson attacks in places that were supposedly refugee centres. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not a detective or anything like that. The name, I suppose, of the channel is a bit based on Batman. But I'm saying to myself, burned out tents and burned out accommodations, and Leo Varadkar saying there will be arrests, and they know it's arson from the get-go. I'm saying to myself, like, that's a bit coincidental. What do you think about that when you hear things like that?
Yeah, it's. I think you mentioned it there a while ago that at this stage, you have to be really, really skeptical about every time. Like I don't listen. Just like what you were saying there, I haven't turned on my radio, and I'm not even joking. Since COVID, I can't listen to their shit because I don't believe them. And funnily enough, actually, when you were talking about Mick O'Keefe there and Toby receiving private messages from RTE saying, can we get your footage? Like, that's where we are. That really is where we are. Like, we don't even need to listen to the mainstream media anymore because we're providing the information ourselves. We are getting the videos. And we have Philip on the ground. Philip is all over the place. Yeah. Ferg is all over the place. A lot of us are willing to travel to these places and find out what's going on for ourselves and disseminate the information for ourselves, But and mainly it's because the media is ideologically captured, completely. Like, especially, and I'm often reminded of it, was the Ardèche for the National Party, where a political party trying to have a discussion as part of an Ardèche were attacked by people who got off buses with weapons. Yeah. You know what I mean? Now, if that happened to Fine Gael or any of the other main parties, you could be absolutely sure the people who did it would be in jail for 40 years.
Oh, yeah, minimum. Yeah.
But the National Party, for some reason, in a supposed democracy, are expendable. So absolutely, like, I will never turn on the radio again. I don't even have the channels. I watch nothing. I literally get everything I want to know about. I go to YouTube for it, or I go to other sources, alternative sources.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point. And I mean, like, sometimes I'd be walking through a shopping centre or wherever it might be, and I had one not too long ago, obviously during the summer, where I spoke to a person at a cash register, and they were talking about climate change. We had 3 days of nice weather, and I said, you can't have 3 days of nice weather here without them at this shit. And the person was like, yeah, now that you say that, they have been harping on about that all day. And I went, it's incredible, isn't it? And they say, oh, yeah, no, I get what you're saying. And I'm saying, but they're drowning you with negativity, and this isn't normal. And you're saying,
yeah,
it needs to stop. And the same thing as well, too. This is why they bring these people onto their news talk stations and all that, is to try and get one over on people that are maybe part of, social media. And, we've got Owen O'Brien here to talk about it. You're not going to ask him a hard question like, what's a woman, though? You're not going to ask him what he meant by that there. And then I've seen a bit of a shift in news talk recently where they are trying to sort of play both sides of the fence, and they're sort of going, we'll get a couple of people in here with some logical and, honest takes. And it's only taken this long, but I think they're feeling the burn from people that are out there, like Philip, like yourself, like Derek, like the Irish Git as well, the Irish Inquiry, Grant Torino, all these guys that have been out there a long time, Mick and Toby. I want to give a special shout out to Mick and Toby, because just to make your point and I suppose go on it a little bit more, they both told RTE to go and fuck off. That's the important thing. The state broadcaster of this country, who an awful lot of people would probably bend the knee to and say, yeah, of course you can have my stuff and you can quote me or whatever like that. Both lads told them to get fucked. And imagine being the staffer at RTE or whoever you are, and you either an intern or whatever you might be, looking at that tweet going, shit. And I have to go back to someone like Brian Donovan or whatever like that and go, by the way, or Brian Dobson, whatever it might be, they said no. And they said it in a very unflattering way and in uncertain terms. Could you imagine the people that are in there? And could you imagine the attitude back towards it? Oh, fucking, who do they think they are? The sort of shit.
I'm just thinking about Mick O'Keefe's response. It was something along the lines of, "Piss off, we're the media now, you hacks." Like, what an epic response. Unbelievable. Like, the state broadcaster being told to go fuck themselves by the far right. Absolutely juicy as you like. Love it. Love to see it.
The state broadcaster on boating is to the far right. Please give me your stuff. Please let me copy your homework there, please. And them going, no.
Fuck, it was glorious, though, I have to say. It really was.
We've got Derek McManus in here in the chat that says pop culture is not frivolous. But listen, I sometimes say things I do, and I don't mean it at times when it comes to pop culture. Pop culture is not frivolous. I do agree with you on that one, and I'm sure you'll agree with me there, Satirical Soldier. It's how it's utilised right now, though. It's pure and utter drivel. Whereas you go and see a movie, I don't know whether you caught it there, Godzilla -1, but I've been singing its praises for the last while, and people would say, oh, how can you support a movie? Aren't you not supposed to be some sort of far-right istaphob? No, Japanese people and what they went through was horrific for sure. And the fact that the movie, they actually called the director of the movie far-right, so I was just like, I'm going to fucking love this. This is going to be great. 100%. This guy's going to be a nationalist and all that. And it was a very nationalistic, masculine movie. And I said, even though I'm not Japanese, imagine that I can empathize with other people. It's funny that. But they made a comment in the movie, and I'm probably going to butcher it here now, but they talked about the government's assuming that people's lives in Japan were cheap. That when they talked about kamikaze and they talked about all of the other things that happened to them during the war, I reflected on it. I honest to God now mean this. I reflected on it for a good week. And I said to myself, how applicable that still is now to today. Like, you have people that didn't give a shit about people in care homes or in hospitals, or now when you're having cases of the suddenlies, or you have turbo cancers, people with cancer now going, Snoop Dogg's daughter, people would say, well, she was always ill, has had a stroke at 24. That's not normal. You know what I'm saying? So these are the things that why we bring it back to these situations, because to remind people of, look what they did. And yes, that goes down to pop culture there. The amount of stuff that's going on in pop culture is crazy. Even Joey Barton now recently, he's wading into the football debate. I don't know whether you've seen any of it, but I certainly turned the football on, not to listen to women. But this is what he's saying, and I said, this is great now that he's coming out and swinging and saying, now he knows he's never getting a job in punditry, so he's like, we'll keep going.
The movies. I'm still trapped in the 80s. I think the last film I watched was the second Aliens, the one with what's his face, that director, James Cameron. I'm still watching the old Aliens, the old Terminators, the old Predators, trading places. These older. I love the older stuff. I watched a good bit of the Marvel for a while after Tony Stark was killed. Then all that extra shit, I couldn't do it. I could not do it.
No, it's
and actually, just when I think about it, that last Matrix was a terrible film. And I'm fond of the John Wicks, actually, when I think about it.
I love them. Yeah, I like them.
Yeah.
They're a bit of mindless entertainment. Did you see the latest Rambo movie? I think is it Rambo Last Blood, where he goes down to, is it Brazil or Mexico or something like that? I tell you, man,
he's done it so.
I love that. And the fact that he was like, let them come to the house, and I'm like, oh, here we go.
Yeah. I'm actually watching the new Jack Reacher show as well, actually. It's pretty good.
That's very good, isn't it? Yeah. I was actually going to recommend that. I'm not seeing the Terminalist. There'll be people here in the chat be like, will you stop talking about the Terminalist? The Terminalist is they're getting a prequel.
Good show.
Yeah, that's awesome. Listen, I love that show from start to finish. And you know what as well? A lot of what went on in the show, I was sending it on to people, and it like that with Dope Sick as well. I don't know whether you've seen that there with Michael Keaton. I was sending those two shows in particular to people all of the time, and they'd get back to me and they go, I can't believe that happens in that show. I can't believe that people bought that. Yeah, by the way, that Dope Sick is actually based on a true story about OxyContin. But the Terminalist, they're like, I can't believe this is happening, that they test stuff on soldiers and send them out and they try to do this to them. And I'm like, But should they forced fucking guys there in America to take this stuff to go out and be part of the military there? Now they're bringing them back now and they're saying, oh, we're going to give you reparations and we're going to give you restored pay and all this sort of stuff. Like, you know, that's why I think an awful lot of the culture stuff is important and it is a driving force behind it. And like you were saying, 80s movies, like you were talking about action stars there. That's a great point. Like, that's why I think Alan Richardson, who was starring as Jack Reacher, he's a Christian, by the way. He has a channel called Insta Church here, and he talks about things from the Bible, in particular passages, and then gives his own spin on it, and it's a great thing. But he said in an interview recently that he says, my wife, he says, I spoke to her, wasn't getting an awful lot of gigs at the time. He said, and I said, I'm going to start up this Insta Church thing. He says, now we'll probably never work again. And I said, that's an interesting point that he made, and he alluded to the fact it was because of his religion, because of the fact that he's Christian. And I said, well, that is super interesting. Now he's become the number one most sought after guy in the world through his own admission. He's in a Jerry Bruckheimer movie. He's in a Guy Ritchie movie. He's been touted as the next Batman. And I'm looking at it going like that. What a time we live in where people are rallying behind him because they're like, this is a guy that stands for what he believes in and he's standing up and this is what they want to back now. You know, I think today is, you know, it's interesting where, you know, Graham Norton last week, I did a retweet on it, and Graham Norton was cribbing about Ireland isn't the Ireland that I knew it was. Yeah, you won't talk about the two fellas in Sligo. You're wearing the Union Jack on a suit there so you can talk for Britain for the Eurovision, and you're telling me that it's not that. I think the days of leftist guys like him are over for most being lectured to by him and people like him. Like, we have so little in common with this guy that you may forget about it. And I think that's where we're at right now. And I think culturally, I think that's an important point.
Yeah. No, and I hope you're right about that as well. Like, if you were to believe the numbers again on the likes of social media, anytime these like news talk, you know, RTE, like all of these, like the standard of entertainment, anytime they put out a tweet, nobody gives a shit. Like, literally no one cares. People will probably like an abusive message in the comments more than they will like the actual, you know, and you can see it yourself as well in the likes of Hollywood. Like, Star Wars is dead. Like, this leftist shit, they have infected everything with cancer. It's just, now, no wonder I'm watching the 80s stuff. Yeah. This wokeness has burnt through everything now at this stage. And Jack Reacher has been the first show that's come along in a little while where a big man is kicking the shit out of people, and we're happy it's happening, you know.
That's it, yeah. And I think that's where it goes when we're looking at those type of TV shows. We've been missing that sort of 80s action hero and action star, and you've seen, you know, what are effeminate men is what they're trying to push as the hero now. And, you know, you can get away with it with Tony Stark because he's a genius and all that. And of course, then you have Captain America that's in there. But you're looking at these other guys, like you're looking at Tom Holland, the Spider-Man, you're saying, like, he's not anywhere near the sort of stature that Spider-Man should be. And I know I'm talking about that physicality standpoint and all of that. But, like, you know, that's why I like the Ben Affleck Batman in particular, because he was like for like when it came to the comic book. Looking at that and then applying it here then, Satirical Soldier, I suppose, what I'd be asking you then next is, if you were given the keys to Ireland tomorrow, how would you fix what's gone wrong? What would be your moves that you would make?
I'll tell you, the first thing I thought about when you said that is there's a great video there going around with that Argentinian president. He's up against a board, and the board has all the different departments against it. And he takes a quivo. I would love to look at, I mean, we are such a nanny state where we invent all these jobs. We have a minister with responsibility for air codes. You know what I mean? That's how fucking sad it is we have here. But I'd love to do exactly what he's doing. And absolute, like, fire, no more than what Elon Musk did with Twitter. He fired 75% of the fucking workers, and it still works fine. I would love to look at all the government dead weight and fire as many people as I humanly could. I would love to look at all the legislation we have and get rid of as much of it as humanly possible. And I'd love to shrink government down to almost a toothless entity, you know. I'd love to just keep shrinking and shrinking it and shrinking it until you find that sweet spot. And again, it's because I suppose I'm a believer in freedom, and I define freedom as the absence of coercion. So the more the government has power over you, the less free you are. And of course, the less fucking power they have over you, the more free you are. And again, I'd love to do what Melee did. It's just fucking fire people. You're all fired. Get out. And one important thing before I do it, actually, is I'd need to reintroduce a particular penalty for a particular crime. But after that, I just start trimming the fat.
I think that particular crime and particular penalty that you're speaking of as well too could apply, to a number of different things. Like you're saying, people getting suspended sentences, for example, for attacking children. I would definitely have them up on that sort of penalty also as well too. We're living in a society right now that is indulging that sort of stuff and saying, move on. We had a judge there now only last week it was there that is being convicted of abusing young boys at the time. Now, it's incredible, the story itself. When I say that again, it's a negative connotation is what I mean by it. This is a guy, by the way, that's a judge that is a tamaldehyde, if I'm not mistaken that word and saying it incorrectly, a tamaldehyde survivor. That was also something that was given to pregnant women, I'd say 2 generations ago, that directly affected children belonging to them there. And that was pushed upon them by so-called medical experts at the time and told, yeah, that's a cure for morning sickness there. And that's people that I know in my own personal life that have spoken about that. And I'd say that's insane that you know about that story and you still went with what happened the last couple of years because the same people in the same sphere told you need to stay behind the windows there. You can't be going outside. You know what I'm saying? Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I tell you, some of it really doesn't make sense when you think about it.
But great to hear what you would do in terms of that then, because and the EU as well too is another thing that I think we need to get ourselves bounced out pretty quickly.
Get away from them. The EU, the UN, the WHO. I'd be quite happy now as a kind of as a more of an isolationist country where we just do trade with other nations. You know, this shit about taking legislation, thousands of pieces of legislation coming from Brussels, from people who I've never seen, I've never met, I wouldn't know their names. Like literally, a building full of strangers are making laws that govern my life. Like, what in the name of God is going on? You know what I mean?
A nameless, faceless entity, which is what I described them as in a recent video that I'm going to have published. And that's exactly how I feel. It's like, and then we've our own people then like Eamon Ryan there that are, as I say, administrators. I mean, it's crazy to think he has 8 advisors. I think that are totaling something in and around 800 to 900,000 a year to advise him.
It's absolutely amazing. Yeah, absolutely amazing. I'm not joking. A junior cert student could advise him better than those 8 fucking monks.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing, like he's going across there to China and then coming back and saying, you have to slow down on the roads there now, 30 kilometers. And you're looking at it going, what are you talking about? Someone else that you had a Twitter spat with recently was Timmy Dooley. Now, Timmy Dooley was on a video not too long ago with Philip Dwyer telling him he didn't know what injection he took. No, nothing. He didn't know much about what he was saying at all. And then he was pictured, I don't know if you've seen the picture, but he was pictured and he was, and maybe do a bit of a Trump for this one. He's pictured very wide-eyed with Zelensky. He looked very, very wishy-washy now he did in that picture, I have to say.
Oh, yeah.
So you had a Twitter spat recently with Timmy Dooley. Can you indulge me here and say to the chat what happened there and let them know? Because some people that are not on Twitter, this is the first time they've ever heard about this stuff.
This is going to annoy you now, but I don't think I remember the spat. I don't remember what it was about, but I know it was probably 2 accounts back because I've been banned twice since. But I think there was a poll taken. Somebody said, who would you elect into power, me or Timmy? And I blew him out of the water, whoever set up the poll. But I can't remember what we were talking about. But either way, Timmy Dooley is a gobshite. As simple as that. He's quite simply a gobshite. And he's an authoritarian as well, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, he's hanging around with his pal Zelensky there. He was there in the blue and yellow flag waving country. You know, I thought that was supposed to be a war zone. Yet the people without any sort of spying have been pictured over in that place there, hand over fist, which is very strange. And like you were saying, there was a poll that went up and people were voting for you as opposed to him. And then he tried to say something smarmy as to put your name on the ballot and we'll see what happens. Now, that's a very strange thing to say, because is that then saying to me that you don't worry about what people are going to vote for? That's a very odd thing for a politician to do. Insofar as, why would you then ask a direct challenger to put their name on the ballot? Is that telling us then that these things seem to be not as they seem. Is our democracy actually a democracy? These are the things that these people open up towards me when they do these things. Like, it's like Hazel Chew. We'll get your thoughts on Hazel Chew now in a moment, because I'm sure you have plenty of of opinion on Hazel Chew. But there's video coming on that tweet that I put out during the week, by the way. The Green Party, in their absolute splendor, provide you with such stupidity that it's so hard not to make videos on them all the time. It feels like punching down. It's a comedy term, we suppose, punching down. But they put out a picture the other day, and I am not joking you. They had a picture of all of them there, all of them, and they look fairly overweight, an awful lot of them, which I don't know how you do that as a Green Party member. But anyway, Hazel Chew was standing there in a yellow coat, and I quote tweeted it, and I said, she looks like Dennis Nedry from Jurassic Park.
Yeah. And you know what? You nailed it. Yeah, you nailed it.
It got more likes. The tweet got more likes than the entire Green Party. And I do constantly say to myself, how is it that this clown show YouTube channel can get more likes than a Green Party, a whole party? Not an awful lot of people were willing to actually like their tweet. There'll be a couple of goofballs that be in here tonight and go, I like the Green Party's tweet now. You ain't going to catch up on my numbers. They've something like 17 likes on that, and I have like 300. I'm talking now out of scale on that one there. But it's definitely not that much, but it's definitely bigger than what they had. And then I wrote under Eamon Ryan's post about the Dennis Nedry comments, and people love it. They lost their shit. They were like, what an image that you're after pulling out there. But when it comes to these people, I think they are now starting, like, I mean, Hazel Chew was on all sorts of radio stations now talking all sorts of geek. What's your thoughts on her? And something I've been saying recently as well is that your man, the African lad that's running for the Green Party, I keep quoting him and saying, this is foreign interference in Irish elections. What's your thought on the idea of a foreigner actually governing us and being part of the political establishment? What's your view?
I couldn't imagine a shower of Irish people going to Nigeria and straight away finding wherever the political parties are, becoming a part of those parties, and then going around calling all the Nigerians racist bigots until we get elected. Could you imagine that in reverse? Because that's basically what these people do. Like that. I can't even, the Samuel L. Jackson looking fella, I can't remember his name or pronounce his name, but he basically goes around saying Ireland is our country, as if it's his country, and he's literally an African who came here for the crack, But I couldn't imagine looking to get into a position of power in a foreign country and then calling all the people who don't want me to be in power show of racist fuckers until they elect me. And even Hazel Chew, if Hazel Chew didn't have the word racist, she'd have nothing to say about anybody. It's her go-to word. Everyone's racist and far right. I mean, you're like a broken record. And funnily enough, actually, for someone who was supposedly born in Ireland and lives in Dublin, she still sounds like someone who came out of Hong Kong 5 minutes ago, however she managed it. And once again, in my view, she's actually more masculine than her husband, who was this pudgy, soft, weak, effeminate man. But, did you see the people they're running in Galway then? Bad enough you have Pauline O'Reilly, who has the exact same view on freedom as Adolf Hitler himself. And she's walking around canvassing with another African who looks like Minnie Mouse and a separate African in Tuam who won some I'm a Black Woman award for being black and a woman. Again, it's such a clown world we're living in. This country is insane. And the Green Party really are. These guys are at the apex of the stupidity that we're witnessing on a daily basis.
I firmly believe that too, yeah. I think when you see that coming into play, and I mean, I remember going to a Tommy Tiernan show about 6 years ago, I think it was, and it's incredible how time flies and things change in 6 years. Like, Tiernan was talking about borders, and he says, if you come in and you can't have a laugh and a slagging, you may go off home there. And then fast forward 6 years, 5 years later, then he's apologising to someone that's gone, I got offended by a joke that he told. She was laughing at the nuns 2 minutes previous, but when it came to slagging a taxi man, she didn't like it. And this is the victim mentality. And indeed, like you said there, these people getting into parties, these people are being sought out. I mean, there was one that was talking about white privilege. Imagine that we went through the famine and we went through hundreds of years of British oppression, and apparently we have white privilege. they've come to the wrong country to start messing about with that, because I tell you what, it might not be that it's getting that way in Dublin. I think most people in Dublin are starting to wake up, but when you hit the likes of Mayo and Wexford and Laois and Westmeath with these types of stupid phrases, those people are they're not too long before they tell you that's ridiculous. And that's what you see in the likes of Orlingford, and you see it in Rosscray, and you see it then in various parts of the country now, like when Buncrana. That video, I know it's talking about a different political party, but Sinn Féin are found out when they were absolutely scalded when they went up to Buncrana, and people said, we know what you're doing, we know what you said in Dublin. So the people in Donegal are taking note of what went on in Dublin. So these people are in serious bother, because if one person does one thing, they're all in trouble. And I remember a video that I did, and it was about Hazel Chew, and after that then, after a number of videos that came out, she then wasn't supported in the Shannon election by the Green Party. And I said, that's interesting. I says, because so many people honed in on her and said, look what this idiot's doing. And it was like she became nuclear, and they were like, whoa, you know what I mean? And Patrick Costello, I keep saying, that's her husband, who is a TD. That's the seat to take next. You must take his seat in the next election, because then she has no reason to be anywhere near any sort of radio station or giving any sort of opinion towards anything. But like I said, she's here 43 years and she speaks still like she's from China. It's a very bizarre thing. I mean, that seems like someone that didn't integrate.
Yeah, it's very unusual. Like, I swear to God, every time I hear her, all I hear is pang, pang, wing, wang, ping, pang. I'm not even joking. Like, I'm pure dead serious. I remember actually a couple of years ago, there's Ebon Joseph. Is that her name? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
She's a black race woman, race studies or some shit. Yeah, in God, but she was on a few years back now. She was on the Sean Moncrief show on News Talk. This is prior to COVID, before COVID, like, and she had such a fucking strong African accent that I knew for a fact that every time Moncrief asked her a question, she'd respond, and all you could hear was unga bunga dunga bunga, racism, begingo bunga gunga gunga, racism. And that's the only word I could hear coming out of her mouth. But I knew Moncrief couldn't understand her, because he would never expand on what she says as part of a flowing conversation. He'd always ask her a different question and a different question and a different question. But I remember I was on Twitter at the time and I said it. I quoted her. I went, unga bunga racism, and Moncrief got onto me after that. But it was a funny little interaction we had, mind you. But again, I just couldn't imagine going to Japan or going to the Congo or going to Brazil or going to some other foreign nation saying, all of you fuckers are morally bankrupt and you're pieces of shit and you better put me in power. Could you imagine it? Like, yet over here, yeah, like that's it. Like over here, for some reason, it's acceptable. I just don't understand it.
But not only in power, but on a pedestal as well too. Like, you should worship us. Then you have these Black and Irish awards as well too, which are scandalous that are occurring. And again, it's just stuff to be criticised and be critical about. I mean, they're talking about the Rose of Tralee and they're saying we might shut that down. Everybody knows why, because they're like, there was definitely going to be a bloke that was going to enter in there, and they know Irish lads that are, there's some fella hanging around GAA club somewhere, and he's thinking, now GAA, for anybody that doesn't know, that's listening from anywhere else, is Gaelic Athletic Association, so it's Gaelic football. There's definitely a book hanging around Kilkenny that's thinking, I'll stick on a wig there with the full beard and I'll go out and I'll have a run at it there and I'll probably win. They know the piss will be taken out of it, and especially here in this country. But isn't it interesting how in 6 years we've gone from, if you can't have a laugh and a joke, don't come here, to, oh no, please don't take my RTE show off me that I'm interviewing people for the 15th time on that no one gives a shit about. We go into the chat there for a sec. Alonso Unfiltered's in here, says, Ninja Knight, hats off, bro, great stream, the numbers are phenomenal. I remember the day is starting off nowhere near these numbers. That's a testament to your great work and determination. Well done, bro. And also the guests that have come on here, including Satirical Soldier and a few others that have lined up as well too. Philip obviously as well too was on here before Christmas. People they always love when the guest comes on as well, because I think myself, I love when the guest comes on because it's a different voice and a different attitude, and you see certain things differently than I do. Not an awful lot, but certainly you see certain things that are different to me. Sheepdog says, I saw Ryan in Pisa Airport, I suppose there, Italy, while Minister for Transport not wearing a mask while the shit was still in place to wear, and he was Minister. Ninja Knight fact, says Sheepdog. I love the Gavin Pepper video of him. That was another really good one. Did you see that one?
Yeah,
Out the airport.
yeah, it was brilliant.
And he
Absolutely brilliant.
But goes to show you then that, like, I mean, it's something that they get criticized for over the world, but, you know, people starting to say that politicians are ugly actors. What's your thought on that opinion?
No, I'm of the like, when you say ugly actors, I even think that's being kind as well. Like, you know, like I'm of the opinion Leo Varadkar would sell this entire country out from underneath all of us if he knew he could be Klaus Schwab's right-hand man. I've no doubt in my mind. Like, I tell you a good one. I was at the centenary for the ambush of Michael Collins in August 22, I'm fairly sure. And Philip Dwyer, a few of the boys were there as well, right?
Yeah.
And I remember looking around, and I'd say Varadkar was actually the only non-white person out of a crowd of thousands. You know what I mean? And I laughed. He got up in the podium and he started talking about freedom. And this is after he locked an entire country down for a flu prior to that. But politicians, like, even there's another guy there now I'm thinking about is Cahill. My brain's going wild. But Cahill Crowe down in Clare would sell his grandmother to stay in power. These people are so despicable, unbelievably despicable. Like, even the term career politician. Like, if I know if I got into politics, I would not give a shit about the next time I'm either voted in or voted out. All I would concentrate on is I have a certain amount of times to do things right by the people who put me into power. But it's the other way around for these. Like, Aidan O'Riordan is already running for elections, or is trying to run for a seat in the EU, because no doubt that spastic knows his seat is on the line in Ireland. So they only care about the next job or the next paycheck or the next position of power. They literally don't care about what the people of Ireland want. They really don't care. We're an obstacle to what they want.
Oh, for sure. And like you're saying there, we are entirely an obstacle to what they want, because they view this as being a game that was already fixed and indeed put up for them to win, with no sort of response or no sort of criticism and no fight. And they weren't prepared for what went on here. They're not prepared for an Enoch Burke that does what he has done now and has defied a court order. And the same people that will tell you that court orders totally matter will be the same people that said the Geneva Convention and the Nuremberg Code meant nothing for the last 3 to 4 years. The very same people. So it's exposed the hypocrisy hand over fist. And when you're talking about career politicians, it's a very dirty term, because it is very clear that it is only about the money for these people. It's not about helping out the people. And I mean, I know that's a very ideological thing to say, and people would say, well, look, when someone gets into power, money sways and everyone has a number. I hear that point for sure. But like, when you're hearing that there's an EU resignation and they're touting names like Micheál Martin and Leo Varadkar, I'm like, there it is. There's the nodding dog. And they're being patted on the head enough times to do stupid things and say silly things. And going back on that commemoration that you were at there was a video, I don't know whether a video or an audio, you might be able to give us a little bit more detail, that was played of Micheál Martin and talking about sovereign nations, a backwards way of a sovereign nation. I'm sure, because some of the videos that emerged from politicians, they were disgusted that occurred. And people were looking around going, fucking hell, that's Martin's voice there. And there was nobody that could. I think maybe was there 1 or 2 people that were telling people to turn it off. And it's like, holy shit, lads, you're defending the enemy here.
I tell you, I was down there a gorgeous day too, actually, when I think about it. And as Micheál Martin and Varadkar were walking up that time to the podium, I'm fairly sure it was Tommy Murphy that had the recording, and they had a big speaker there. And all they basically did, just like what you said there, is they played Micheál Martin's own words back to Micheál Martin. We want nothing to do with the backwards notion or backwards idea of sovereignty. And they played it back on repeat and on repeat. And a few people got annoyed. And to be fair, fuck them. But there's one thing that bothers me, and it'll annoy me until I go to the grave. But after the entire event finished, a woman came over and she said something. It was either to his man or to the group, but basically said something on the lines of you all disgust me, something like that. And if I was back there again, I would love to have followed her, calling her every name under the sun. But again, I was actually shit faced the night before, and I wasn't myself. But I would have loved to have had the opportunity to follow that woman and tell her exactly what I thought of her. And she's standing there commemorating a man who gave up his life for his country, while telling us who love freedom that Micheál Martin is trying to fuck our country up and telling us we're the problem. It annoyed me now, I have to say.
It's interesting that you mentioned that as well too, and I know there's a lot of women here in the chat as well too, and obviously as well too you have the fantastic Tracy there as well yourself, and it's amazing that when you look through history and time, and you know this is not really it's not a hugely popular opinion, but like I suppose when you look at things, like I know an awful lot of women, and women don't like other women. You know, I think if they were honest, they would say that. And you see them being pushed into positions of power and positions of no. And you get the same sort of rhetoric from all of them, leftist ones now. I'm not talking about the ones that are on our side of the fence because they get what's going on. But you get these women that are there that'll push this. Sorry there for a second. That'll push this nonsense of you shouldn't have any sort of speech. And again, we'll go as far. And it's something I've noticed more so even recently. Even the Joey Barton stuff and even Helen McEntee, they will use vile and hateful and disgusting and other sorts of words that they will use to try and attack someone's character rather than attack the argument. And we see that all the time on Twitter. You know, it's like yourself as well when you're slagging someone or whatever like that, or telling them their opinion's stupid, and they'll make a personal jibe about you in particular, and you're going, you've totally lost the argument then at that point. Listen, I do it myself sometimes where I'll take the piss out of someone, but when you have someone that is going to that level that they have no debate and they can't say anything back, I think that's why when you reflect on that incident with that woman would never ever reflect positively on that incident, whether it would be to be called something or whether it would be to walk away and think about the words that would ring in her ears, I'm sure, of what Micheál Martin said, unless she has some sort of fella beside her that's anyway good that would say to her, yeah, listen, Micheál Martin said things like that and they were ridiculous, because that's how you bring an awful lot of this nonsense down. Like, imagine Helen McEntee walks home into her front door there, and the husband there, who looks a bit strange now, we would say, to say the very least, it looks very beta male. Can you imagine who wears the trousers in that relationship? You know what I'm saying? I think you can picture it. Yeah. You know, before you come onto the stream, I'm sure you don't mind me saying or anything like that, but Satirical Soldier was having a good laugh and a good slagging with Tracy, and she was having one back. And that's important because, again, you know, you're having the laugh about it, and it's very clear. Obviously, she'll say different. She'll be like, no, Ninja, no, it's definitely me. But it's very clear who was doing what there. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we have a laugh. She'd pop the head in now and she'd say, no, Ninja, that's definitely me. But do you get what I'm saying? Like, and I'm sure the chat understand what I'm saying. When, like, you're even saying recently there, Joey Barton puts up a tweet there of Sky Sports with this total woke, tokenized individual that they brought into the studio. She makes a balls about the Africa Cup of Nations about 80 times or something. Or was it about 6 times in 80 seconds? Names gone. There's a guy actually standing beside her. I'll send you the video later. There's a guy, an older white guy that's standing there. I don't know the man's name, and he's looking at the camera, dead into the eye of the camera, and he's looking around, and it's like someone gestures behind them to be like, stop talking, stop, because she's butchering it. And they know that the likes of Barton and anybody else that's on this side are going, yeah, look at that. Look, this is the tokenized nonsense we're talking to you about. And it feeds into what we're talking about, which is when you send people that are in inept, or like Helen McEntee of the world, or when you send people there that are totally beta male to these organizations like the EU, they are not standing up for you. They are just there and they go, oh, what's it that you want us to do? Yeah, no problem. You know?
Yeah, like I'm fairly sure even Tracy has called Helen McEntee a gender quota. You know what I mean? And that's a serious problem we have today. It seems to be across the Western world. It's not just a problem in Ireland. Where people will hire you on the basis of your skin color or your gender or your sexuality, instead of hiring you on the basis of your talent, your merit, and your ability to produce results. Mm-hmm. And I see Elon Musk, I think he posted something on his own Twitter account there recently about fucking an airplane company, Boeing or whoever it was, where they're hiring like a black woman because she's a black woman to fly a plane, like diversity hires. Like you're literally putting people in danger. Like, you know,
Yeah.
Helen McEntee is completely out of her depth, and I agree with anyone who thinks that she was a diversity hire. You know, she literally a diversity hire. What has she done? She has literally destroyed the country. We've no border. You can potentially go to jail if you say something subjectively offensive. She's using the guards as a state asset to kick the shit out of people. She has a man who was part of MI5 as her like number one guy. Like, you couldn't write this stuff, you know, how terrible it all is.
And also a female Canadian waiting in the wings with one of those buzz cuts,
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
Like, I almost, when that whole thing happened with Drew Harris, when they were talking about that whole no confidence vote, and a part of me was just like, put the Canadian front and center, because this will just be game, set, and match. Because right now you have Drew Harris, who was a clown for sure, but you have this other goofball that's waiting in the wings. Please put her out, and please just show everybody, because this person is waiting in the wings, and she for sure is having some sort of influence, I would imagine, because she wasn't brought here for no reason. There's a reason why that woman's here. And you see some of the ways female Gardaí behave. I saw an article today, and it was talking about a guy with 104 previous public order convictions or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And the crux of the argument was he got 2 months in jail because he gave the female guard a false name. And I was saying, of all of the things that go on in this country, now whether the guy obviously with 104 previous convictions or previous, I don't even know whether it was a conviction, but maybe charges. And I said, of all the things that are going on in this country, they're more bothered about a fella that's pissed up giving someone a fake name than people that are attacking kids, for example. You know what I mean? They're happy to plaster this guy's face and name all over the paper. And yeah, you have these things happen week in, week out, and it's symptomatic of what's wrong with society. And again, you know, I think it's really interesting when Helen McEntee makes that comment about that judge. She talks about gender violence and these type of things, and she never mentioned about protecting kids. She never mentioned about how there should be harsh sentences upon people that attack children. Not once did she.
Yeah.
Now, that's where my mind will go when it comes to these things. I'd be straight out going like that. Anyone who attacks a child in that manner, it's a public penalty in my view. I think it should be publicly done. You will frighten them, because right now they're not frightened, and they should be.
I agree with you absolutely. You know, if she put as much time and dedication into actually defending our border and actually concentrating on real crime instead of going through pages and pages of tyrannical legislation on how to police people's words, you know what I mean? That's her legacy. Her legacy is, I created legislation to put people in prison for subjectively hurting someone's feelings. That's what she has given us. She has given us literally the most totalitarian shit that, like, you wouldn't get this in North Korea. You know, in a Western society, you could potentially go to prison for hurty words, from a noise that comes from your face that someone hears and gives you a tear. You're going to prison. Are you fucking stupid? And again, that's only part of the legislation. It says nothing about the guards kicking in your door and violating your right to privacy, violating the sanctity of your home, and taking your devices. And if you don't give them the password to your devices, you're going to prison. Like, who comes up with this shit? Exactly. Crazy.
It is, and I mean, I think with people like herself as well too, she obviously has an axe to grind. And an awful lot of them, when you look at them, they have their own axes to grind, I think, with society and with people in general. You know, with relation to her, what happened to her father, I think, you know, there's an awful lot of rumours out there about Radgar and what his father thinks about him, whether it be true or whether it be not. Micheál Martin's own personal life as well too, and what happens with relation to his family and that, you know. And then you see Paul Murphy, then another, you know, egg-headed fool that's making all sorts of ridiculous comments. And I think it's interesting that his missus, I don't know, again, allegedly speculatively on loan, because I don't know what that is at all, but that's a Yankee from Seattle, and she's saying that there's people, the far right, are outside my house. Oh, so you have a problem when fellas that are unidentified are outside your house, but not when it's outside anybody else's house. According to you, they're racists. So interesting points.
It's hilarious. Yeah, absolutely hilarious.
I'll jump back into the chat now for a moment as well too, because I'm conscious of that as well too. There's lots of people in there. Pamsy Doodle 16 sent a super sticker. Thanks very much appreciated. Some of the names that you get in here are crazy. They're absolutely brilliant. They are. people talking about Podrick O'Malley says, how are you in tonight? Good to see you here. Thanks very much appreciated. We've 300 plus people now here tonight in tonight's stream. And I think it's a new channel record, so I want to thank Satirical Soldier for that there. You have to bring in the numbers in tonight there. Unbelievable. Let's keep going here. Yeah, so Ryan Corcoran, there's a guy in here now. Apparently this guy is Ryan Corcoran. This fella's is a Fianna Fáiler. Now I don't know whether this is someone's pulling the what shall we say? I was going to say something else there. Pulling the Euro might be a good one there. This guy is apparently in Fianna Fáil and like that, and I'm like, holy shit! If this is where we're at right now, where there's Fianna Fáilers logging in and going, yeah, no, this is bullshit. We're at a different stage. Fair play to you. Thanks for being here. Appreciate that. Make sure you vote Micheál Martin out of that party as soon as possible, please. And thanks.
Yes.
So good days in here. Says Ninja Knight. You were in. We need to get the subs up. She's saying it's number of 6 is there. Can we get a few numbers? Yeah, please do get off that as much as possible. Either unsub from me now or sub to me now to get me past that number.
Yeah. Come or go.
I'm not like that freak, by the way, that was out there at recently at Hasbro's thing as well too. A guy was like, we got 666 comments on my video, and I was just like, this is a fella that's been promoted by a toy company to kids. Like, you know what I mean? Some people commented on it and they were like, you're taking it a bit too serious there. And I was like, no, not seriously enough, if I'm being honest with you. We've got Fergus Powers in here as well too. Big shout out to him, and he's giving shout outs to Satirical Soldier as well too. Chat's absolutely flying.
The man's a legend.
Oh man, I tell you, the videos that he's done, and I mean, I remember seeing him back when he was outside Mountjoy for Enoch Burke, and I was saying to myself, I was just like, you know, this guy's got something about him. And now he's there. He's out in Ballybracken, Ballyfermot, and he spent the talent. And he's all around the country now as well too, which is great, you know. And that's what's. I want to get your opinion on that as well too. Apparently, people have been sent around to different places like RTE and any of these politicians is no problem. And yet, though, if one of our guys like Fred Dwyer happens to cross out talent into somewhere else in Dublin, it's apparently an agitator, and apparently is someone that can't be in that other area.
Yeah.
It's astounding.
Because of course,
we can elect Africans and Indians. Yeah. We can elect Africans and Indians.
Yeah, because of course, you know, your right to freedom of movement is completely dependent on how you view the world in this country for some reason. That if I go somewhere, I'm a far-right agitator and not a concerned citizen. But if someone else goes somewhere, as long as they have the right politics, you know, they're fucking heroes or they're very nice people. Like, I'm not a communist. I don't want to enslave anybody. I don't look at your property and your stuff and think I want that for me. Like this thing about, you know, he's far right. If fucking far right, like Helen McEntee there, actually, just to come back to her, she defined far right as somebody who hates the state. And you know something? By that definition, I'll fucking take it. I'll absolutely take it. I'll take it all day. But the problem with these labels is they change every 5 minutes. But again, it just shows that anytime Philip goes somewhere, he gets the numbers, he gets the views, people like him. He's always well received, you know, no matter where he goes. And you'd be guaranteed the establishment hate it. Journalists hate it. And anything they can do to derail Philip and his momentum, they're going to say it. And as far as I'm concerned, all of us, anytime we're called far right, we should really take that as a compliment. You should take it as there's somebody somewhere in this country thinking about you so much that it's festering. Like, there's people there now around the country looking at my big fat head, and it's festering them, and I'm living rent free in their brain. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a win. That's a huge win, and long may it last.
And let's not forget, a lot of those people, by the way, are paid to be annoyed at you. Again, allegedly, spectively on that one. But like, loads of them do come from that train of thought, I think, that they just inherently hate you and they won't debate you, of course, as well too. Whereas we do what we're doing, and we're doing it for nothing because it's passion, and we love Ireland and we want it to be somewhere safe and somewhere for, you know, future generations of Irish people to be calling a homeland. Yet these people on the other side don't want that. They want this, you know, diversity quota society, which is not good. And Sweden, like I said, is the litmus test. They've told you from beforehand, listen, this is a bad idea. You've got Keep On in here in the chat as well too, that says about Sean Strickland's rant in the UFC about the Canadian reporter. Did you see that there?
Oh, it was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. He nailed it.
He did, and do you know what the interesting thing is about him? Now, he's an interesting one insofar as, like, he's kind of your typical American currently, which is, he's real like, I'll say what I like about who I want and how I want, and you're going, great. And then in the next breath, then when Drake is too Plessy and so's him, he's like, you can't say that. And I'm like, that's America in a nutshell right now. You can give it, but you can't take it an awful lot of the time. But interesting character himself as well, has a very interesting history. But I thought what he said to the Canadian was very appropriate, and I think we do need to. I think what he tried as much as he could, I think, to say without saying it was, you do not dislike the media enough, and that's a constant comment that gets bandied around now, which is you don't understand how much these people absolutely hate you for what you stand for and what you believe in, because it's difficult for them. It makes their job more difficult.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. And at the end of the day, you have to understand too, actually, we are making these people obsolete. Like they're literally obsolete. And just to go back again, Mick O'Keefe and Toby, the two boys are getting private messages saying, help us out here, we're stuck. And no wonder they're going to be mad. And let them be mad. Again, I hope they're thinking about me. I hope they're whinging in their pillows thinking about me.
Apparently, just as I'm reading this here in the chat there as I'm going along there, because no doubt that they are thinking about you all of the time. I'm sure that they would like to have some ghoulies, but they're not up to it. To borrow your phrase there, but apparently the ESB building has gone up in flames now.
Oh,
yeah. So I think listen. My way of looking at things, and again, as I said, from America's point of view, because we've seen how it goes, this stuff is going to ramp up, and I'm not saying from It's amazing, I think, that people can't find who these people are. There's no CCTV footage, I should say, that's ever been released or anything like that. They keep telling you there'll be arrests. So whenever that happens, I'm like, that's suspect. That's weird, So we'll wait and see how things go there. What was I going to say to you then? What you have now, I think, is a great momentum at hand. And is there any upcoming videos from you on your channel that you have thought about recently and that you're going to push forward?
I haven't thought of a script really in the last while, but what I've been doing for the last couple of weeks is I'm making short videos, maybe like a minute or 2 minutes long, where I'm really just trying to nail the points down, and I send the videos off, and some of them are doing very, very well. I put out one there talking about the referendum about 2 weeks ago. I'd say it's easily been viewed maybe 500,000 times on all platforms, and I'm very happy with that. Talking about the fact that they're trying to make the Constitution a gender neutral document to appease the trans activists, which is absolutely a fact. And they're trying to expand on the definition of family to incorporate the term other durable relationships, to allow foreigners to bring over their extended families from whatever countries they came from. But that particular video, that has gone all over the shop, and I hope it does persuade people to vote no in the referendum.
Yeah, I think that's the next big one as well too, is to let people know like that and to reshare that video before we jump off as well too, because I'm very wary of the time now, approaching nearly 3 hours. I'm sure you're sitting there going, dying for an L slash. But that's often the thing that people say to me. They're like, "How do you go for these hours and you don't have to go anywhere?" And I'm like, "Listen, it's the advantage of youth at this moment in time." But all jokes aside, though, you're also on Telegram as well too. That's where you are at. Have you got a Rumble channel as well, or what's the story?
I don't know. I tell you, I'm trying to, that Instagram account that I have. For the longest time, it was actually just photos of fucking landscape and the dog, and I've deleted the whole lot, and I'm just doing politics on it. I'm going to try and keep that channel as clean as possible so that it stays live, and I've been gathering a little bit of momentum over the last few weeks. I'm literally going to try and keep that going for as long as possible, and I think I should be able to achieve that. Twitter, I'm still going to act the bollocks on Twitter if people annoy me, so I could lose that account anytime. But with the Telegram, I'm heavily censored on Telegram. It is what it is. But I'm going to keep the YouTube alive anyway. I'm going to try and get the Instagram account to go ape shit. I want to get that one up and going. And if I manage to stay on Twitter, we'll see how that goes. But definitely on Twitter, that's where I'm going to be a bold boy, because at least you can tell politicians to go fuck themselves to their face on Twitter.
Absolutely, and I think that's the way to do it. I think going forward, like as you know, I like Gab, but Gab is somewhere that's still growing as well too at the moment, and it's not as big as anywhere else. Twitter does seem to be having a bit of a turn in events, which is a good thing for us, obviously. And I think Instagram is another one that's, again, it can be good, but it can also be something that they can stifle pretty quickly as well too, with the links to Facebook, Telegram as well. I like what you're putting up there, and there's a lot more uncensored videos that you can put there. So that's a really good one there for anyone that doesn't know Telegram. Go over there and have a look. A couple of last things that before we finish up, because we're at the end of the chat now as well too. We've got Luke that says, hey Lunge, great to hear you live streaming. Hope you're well. And it's nice everyone in the chat. Luke from a specific area. I wouldn't go mentioning where you're from, Luke. You know, you never know what sort of weirdos are out looking at this. And I'm not talking about our people on our side. People on our side seem to be top of the pops there. They're absolutely no bother. But you've got weirdos on the left there that will do strange things. So just be careful, is all I'd say with that. Renews era. So this is something I used to say. You say renews because they used to screech. They did. A good account here. Would Mike ever consider running for an election?
I have a feeling that if I attempted to run for election, I'd have every horrible thing I've ever said ever on social media just be utterly revived and brought out. And I don't mind saying it. I have said and will continue to say the most horrible shit, but you can be guaranteed it's always directed at the right people. You know, the lefties the lefties will go down this road. Oh, he hates all women. He hates all this. And I do my fuck. I hate Marxists. That's the end of it. If you're a Marxist, you're a piece of shit, and you will always be a piece of shit. And any which way I can hurt your feelings, and as I've proven before, if you have a dead child like Charlotte, I'm going for him. I don't give a shit. Whatever I can do to insult you and hurt your feelings, that is where I'm going. And I'm not sure if the average normie in the street is ready to hear about me, we'll say. And don't get me wrong, I reckon my policies will be fantastic. But I don't know.
To be quite honest with you, I think people probably would, and I think the left will lose the reason over that, and they say no chance. But anytime you see anything negative attributed to Donald Trump, his poll numbers just keep going up. You know, I think some of the videos that you put out, even some of the T-shirts that you wear, the would you say the symbol from Germany that has multicolors on it, for example, people that's getting around different WhatsApp groups, and people are like, "Who's this guy? Like, this is hilarious." You know what I mean? I think it would have in the current world where everything is so stifled, I think it would have the opposite effect. I actually think it would surge, and I think you do quite well in that. Personally, myself thinking. Armchair Limerick Nationals in here says, great stream, lads. Ninja Night, these Ukrainians and foreigners are going to sway our elections. Disgraceful that the cabal can import voters tyranny. Absolutely, and I mean that's the point that they're making, is that they're going to bring in so many people that they're just going to try and outvote you. And again, it becomes difficult then for you to go like what we're doing right now, like here tonight. Do you vote for the Green Party? No. Do you know anyone that voted for them? No. Well, it becomes different then when it's an African that you're speaking to, because you don't know them. You know, nobody knows them. So it's difficult to find out who they actually did vote for. And of course, then when anyone goes in to a polling station, you best believe that some people will tell you one thing and will say another then in the polling station as well. That can happen, you know. Yeah. So yeah, I think we're at the end of the chat there now. We're all caught up. Is there anything that you wanted to plug or anything that you wanted to say before we jump off here tonight?
Not at all. I'm not joking. I'm always extremely shocked and grateful at the notion that people do want to talk to me. I'm genuinely grateful the fact that you'd bring me on. I'm grateful for the people who are willing to listen, and you know, long may this movement last. You know, long may we keep serving freedom and keep trying to take our country back. And as far as I'm concerned, you lefties, if Palestine is for the fucking Palestinians, Ireland is for the Irish, and that's how it's going to go.
100%, totally agree with you. It's great to have you on, and again, I suppose we'll close out with this one here from Ferg. Ferg says, Ninja Night, the Satirical Soldier is the Irish Sean Strickland. I actually think he's more hardy than Sean Strickland, if I'm being honest. He might be calling about the haircut there. It might be like Sean Strickland. But anyway, great job, boys. Well done. God bless everyone in this fight. Okay, see you down the road, you beautiful patriots. Aaron Gabra. I'm gonna have to get him on soon as well too, because he be some laugh now on
A
this.
legend, absolute legend. Easily one of the hardest working lads in the country when it comes to this cause. Easily.
100% up and down the place. And in fairness to him as well too, outside Mountjoy for Enoch as well, I was just like, you know what, fair dues to him, because there wasn't an awful lot of people that were standing up and saying things at that point in time. And I think that was a big turning point. I remember highlighting him on a stream. I was like, look at this dude. This dude's out here all time, every week. Like, do you know what I mean? He's doing the business. And they've heads turned, like, you know, massive people with massive money now, and you're going, interesting times ahead. It's all positive, I think, anyway. So look, we'll close it out there, guys. Thanks very much for joining in. Satirical Soldier obviously has his YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed to him. Go over there, support them. Make sure you've got the videos, getting more and more views. Drown out this mainstream media is what I would say. So thanks for being here tonight. I've really appreciated it and totally enjoyed it. So thanks again, guys.
Nice one. Thanks.